Hello there, friends. This is Spencer Michaud, and today we're going to be talking about the astrology of December 2024. Hope that you're having a wonderful afternoon out there. We are going to be going over a whole lot of astrology today. We're going to talk about lunations, new full moons, quarter moons, ingresses of planets into new signs. We're going to talk about solar phases today, including a Mercury cazimi, a Mars retrograde. We're going to see Mercury stationing direct and emerging from under the beams. We've got out of bounds planets today. We're going to break it all down to you from a 30,000 foot viewpoint and then from a more granular viewpoint of zooming in each day or to the most important aspects for the month. If you are here today, please let me know in the chat. Let me know where you're stopping in from. It's always nice to see your smiling faces as well. I have a few announcements before we get to it today. Of course, if you need to reach out for a reading, I am available. And I love to do readings personally with you and online here as well. Check me out at spencermichaud.com if you want to reach out for a mythos natal reading, a kairos transit reading. I do astrological tutoring. I like to break down things in great detail using the decans, as well as tarot and the I-Ching and animal symbolism as well. So check that out on my website, spencermichaud.com. You click on the Book Now button if you want to schedule a reading. Also have a Sagittarius sale right now. It's Sagittarius season. Happy Sagittarius season, friends, depending on when you're listening to this. I have a webinar where I break down all of the significations of each 10-degree section of Sagittarius, each of the three 10-degree sections of Sagittarius in great detail. Some of the slides I'll show you today, but you can find that on my website at spencermichaud.com for 20% off. That's in the store button if you want to find that. You can also find previously recorded webinars, including my Stars and Cards webinar, where I break down the connection between tarot and astrology, as well as our brand new Dignity and Devotion Moon and Mercury past recorded webinars as well. We're in the middle of a 7-planetary Dignity and Devotion webinar series, and you can find the previously recorded ones in that store also. Speaking of which, we have Venus coming up on December the 14th, the second Saturday of this month, or of December. So we're going to be breaking down all the significations with Venus. We're going to talk about the astrology. We're going to talk about the mythology. We're going to talk about Venus's synodic cycle, and then we're going to help you understand how to create a devotional practice to Venus through astrological magic, through creating an altar space, through understanding the Orphic hymns and the days of the week and the significations associated with Venus to help you craft an amazing ritual and connect with this beautiful deity. My beautiful partner, Tanya Andrews, is going to be joining me for this. She does a great job helping to share this information, but also with her magical workings through Third Coast Mojo, which you can find over on Etsy. And right now she has a beautiful sale, 50% off of every Magic for Everybody, she calls it, which is a custom oil blend that is specifically tailored to your natal chart. There's also going to be a Venus super box set that's coming out soon, so make sure you go check her out on Third Coast Mojo and follow her on social media as well. If you would like to contribute to the work that I'm doing here today, you can buy a super chat with a little $ in the chat here today, or you can go to buymeacoffee.com and support the channel through that website. It's sort of a Patreon substitute that it helps me keep the lights on here, so I appreciate all of you and all of your generosity. All right, friends, those are our announcements for the day. Got a couple people stopping in. Mystical Blooms is here. Hello, Mystical Blooms, joining us from Ontario, Canada. Nice to see you, friend. That's a new name. Hope that you're having a wonderful Friday afternoon as we're recording this. Rachel Fletcher is here. What's up, Rachel Fletcher? Ooh, you got a nice new profile picture there, Rachel. I like the glasses. Hello from Roanoke, Virginia. All right. Rachel's a good friend of the show, and I hope that you're doing well, and I love the owl emoji there. Hope everything's going well your way, my friend. Okay, if more of you are stopping in, make sure you let me know here in the chat. It's always nice seeing my friends here and getting to share with all of you. Okay, friends. How about some big picture thoughts for this month? We have some pretty interesting astrology coming in December. We have a big Mars retrograde that's coming. Mercury is going to be stationing direct. Those two things in particular are going to shift the way that we go about our daily practices, our communications with one another, the way that we express conflict and our willpower. So I will break that down with you here today. We're going to see Mars retrograding in Leo and Mercury stationing direct in Sagittarius. We also have 2 new moons. This is one of those, I guess, blue moon months where you have two new moons in the same month. So we will talk about that. We've got 1 new moon in Sagittarius and then another new moon in Capricorn. And we will also talk about the full moon in Gemini as well. We also have Mercury Cazimi this month, which is pretty interesting. Mercury is being renewed in the heart of the sun during its retrograde passage. So this is Hermes visiting the underworld and getting renewed in the heart of the sun, being able to look to the past and look to our inner voice and inner wisdom to maybe figure out how to move towards our chosen goals. So this is something that we'll talk about more in depth today as well, but we've got a Mercury Cazimi on December the 5th. We also have a lot of mutable squares and oppositions this month. A lot of planets moving through Gemini, Pisces, and Sagittarius that are going to be squaring off and opposing one another, including a T-square or 2. So we're going to have a lot of change that's going to be happening in December, and it may feel a little bit confusing and destabilizing because mutable signs are the signs of change, the ones that are the transitions from one season to another. So we'll have to buckle in for some of those changes. We might feel like we're pulled in a lot of different directions in this month. And then we also have a couple malefic enclosures. We have a malefic enclosure of the sun that's going to be happening from the end of November to the very beginning of December. So we're going to talk about that. We also looked to see that Mercury is going to be in a malefic enclosure from the 6th to the 13th of December as well. So we'll teach you how to navigate that as well. That's basically when a planet is being kind of hemmed in by the 2 malefic planets, Mars and Saturn, whether it's by conjunction or bodily aspect or through a casting array on either side. I'll show you and I'll explain that to you as we go along today. But a little bit of some challenging astro weather for solar and mercurial significations this month. All right, more friends stopping in. Candy Corn, what's up, Corinne? Nice to see you. Hope you're doing well, my friend. I owe you an email, so I will get back to you as soon as I can. I know that we're in the process of communicating, and I love it when people reach out to me, and I'm so happy to work with all of you. So give me a day or two when I get the messages. But nice to see you, friend, joining us from Connecticut, and hope you're doing well. Kai is joining us. Reverend Kai is here from Kansas. How you doing? Or it's just Kai now. We changed our screen name here, but hope you're doing well, Kai, and nice to see you here in the chat as well. And we've got people connecting. Yeah, no rush. Thank you, Corinne. Appreciate that, friend. It's been a lot going on this week. These monthly astro live streams require quite a bit of preparation. So I appreciate the patience, friends, when you're reaching out to me. I always love hearing from you, though. So please don't be afraid to reach out to me. Okay, friends, let's go over sort of the 30,000 foot view. We went over kind of the big themes. So now let's zoom in just a little bit further. And we've got a number of lunations. I told you that we had 2 new moons, but we have a new moon on December the 1st at 9 degrees of Sagittarius. Our first quarter moon is going to be at 17 degrees of Pisces on December the 8th. Then we have a full moon in Gemini at 23 degrees of Gemini on December the 15th. The last quarter of that moon cycle on December the 22nd at 1 degree Libra. And then we have our final second new moon of the month at 9 degrees of Capricorn on December the 30th. That new moon is also going to coincide with Mars going out of bounds. So that should be interesting. We have 2 ingresses this month. We have Venus moving into Aquarius on the 7th of December. So Venus conjoining Pluto this month, like immediately as it ingresses into Aquarius. That could bring up some really interesting things in the collective as far as how we are dealing with people that have been cast into exile. Maybe we are starting to find some of the benefits of banding together on the fringe. We also have the sun moving into Capricorn on the 21st of December, which is our winter solstice. So sort of a renewal for the sun on some level. It's the very lowest it can be in declination, which is how high it rises in the sky. And we're starting to see the sun sort of ascending in power at that point. It's the lowest we can get, and now we'll see the return of the light, which I think is always a really interesting point in the year, especially for setting intentions. I like to set intentions at the winter solstice rather than the arbitrary new year, January 1st date, because I think that they are very powerful at that moment in time. We also have a number of solar phases this month, which are basically the way that the planets are relating to the sun, whether they're conjoining the sun or stationing retrograde or direct or emerging from under the beams to become visible once again. So on December the 5th, we have our Mercury Cazimi at 14 degrees of Sagittarius. Mercury will be retrograde and being renewed in the heart of the sun. We have Mars stationing retrograde at 6 degrees of Leo on December the 6th. So we're going to see Mars moving back into Cancer in January and just hanging out in that area that we've been dealing with Mars and its fall in Cancer for some time now. So we're going to have to kind of reevaluate some of the ways that we resolve our conflicts and how we assert our willpower. On December the 7th, we have Neptune stationing direct at 27 degrees of Pisces. So maybe our illusions we're starting to wake up from some of our illusions or a bad dream or something like that. That would be nice, wouldn't it? Waking up from some of these bad dreams we've been having lately. And maybe we're starting to understand some of the sacrifices that are going to be required of us moving forward, especially in the third 10-degree section of Pisces. On December the 13th, Mercury retrograde emerges from under the beams as the morning star. It will start rising before the sun. At this point, it's 6 degrees of Sagittarius. So before it stations direct 2 days later, on the 15th of December, it's going to emerge as the morning star. And oftentimes we get messages that are really important for us to pay attention to when Mercury becomes visible again. So pay attention to those dates. And then, of course, we have that stationing direct of Mercury at 6 degrees of Sagittarius on the 15th of December. A couple out of bounds planets this month. Venus is going to be out of bounds. Venus is out of bounds as I'm recording this. It began its out of bounds phase from October the 25th, and it's going to be out of bounds all the way until December the 3rd. So we've been having some challenges with Venus potentially kind of being outside its normal expression. So maybe that's led to some desires or some relationships that have been unique, to say the least. But we're going to have Venus kind of falling back in line with the socially acceptable established order, I guess you could say, on December the 3rd. The moon is going to move out of bounds at 3 points in this December month. So it'll be out of bounds from December 1st to December 5th, from December 13th to December 18th, and then from the 27th to January 1st. Now, those are times where we're probably feeling a little bit like our bodies are being pushed to their limits, where our emotions can be a little bit out of the ordinary. Maybe we're feeling really, really tired, really fatigued, over emotional, or just very extremely emotional. So those are times to say, oh, maybe I should just check in with myself if the moon is out of bounds and practice some good self-care around that period of time. And then, of course, we have kind of the big elephant in the room this month with Mars going out of bounds on December the 30th, the very end of the month. And Mars is going to be out of bounds until April the 7th, which is quite a long time. This could be sometimes where our anger starts to bubble over, where we are maybe feeling like we want to assert ourselves in ways that are uncharacteristic. We have to be careful of that, although it could lead to some breakthroughs potentially. We may be pushing our bodies to the limits, and I think we have to be real careful of that, because sometimes when Mars is out of bounds, both our anger and our will can kind of get us in some trouble, right? I think that it can absolutely help us to sever from a situation that's been really difficult, but I think sometimes we can take it too far where we can we have to be careful of creating collateral damage, is what I will say. So make sure that by the end of the month you have proper ways to release the steam valve on some level. I think that's a really important thing to do, releasing the steam valve, so that the pressure, the internal pressure that we're feeling in a reaction to some of the really difficult things that we're going through as a collective right now, that doesn't build up and spill out in ways that are detrimental to our health and to the health of others. The other thing that I just think is important this month let's talk more about those malefic enclosures of the Sun and Mercury. So from November the 27th to December the 4th, the Sun is going to be enclosed by Saturn and Mars from 5 degrees of Sagittarius to 12 degrees of Sagittarius. So I will show you exactly when that's going to end and the aspect that's going to end that. It's really the Sun's malefic enclosure is going to end with the square to Saturn. So we'll break that down. And then Mercury is going to go into that malefic enclosure through its retrograde cycle from the 6th to the 13th, from 13 degrees of Sagittarius, and it will be in that enclosure as it backs to 7 degrees of Sagittarius. And it will be released by a sextile to Venus. And I will show you on the chart what that all means, because some of these things can get a little confusing if you haven't worked with this particular technique. But I like this channel to be a teaching channel as much as just getting your astro weather. So that is sort of the secondary look. I'm going to check in with my folks here again. We've got people connecting. All right. I like to see that. Friends showing up in the chat. I love it. Painted Turtle's here. What's up? 2 new moons this month. Yes, please. Hi, friends. Nice to see you, Lauren. Hope you're doing well, my friend. Joining us, I believe, from Kansas. And yeah, we're going to dive into those new moons. It's always interesting when we have 2 lunations or new lunations in a month, right? I think on some level it's kind of arbitrary, right? Because the months are sort of divided in this semi-arbitrary way. They're not completely aligned with the lunar cycle as they might need to be if we wanted to be completely accurate with our calendars. So does it have any specific meaning? I don't know, but that's debatable. But I do think it is interesting to be able to have to break down 2 initiating type of energies within the same month. So I think that there's going to be a number of things that we're going to be able to put into motion this month. Lauren says, out of bounds Venus. I've been working with that Venus. Very artsy and loving emails sent to my long distance friends. Ooh, I like that. I like that. Yeah, I hear you. I've been connecting with my neighbors a little bit with out of bounds Venus. Venus rules my 10th and my 3rd house of neighbors. And I spent some time this morning helping a neighbor who was dealing with, I think, the out of bounds Mercury right now. His garage caught on fire. He had an electrical fire, like he had something that was. And here's my PSA for the day. I was talking to the fire marshal today as I was getting to know my neighbors a little bit more. He had an extension cord plugged into a surge protector, like that had multiple outlets. And the fire marshal was like, "That's a big no-no. Don't plug your surge protectors into an extension cord because it can't handle the load." So that was news to me. I didn't know that, and I'm gonna have to look around my home and maybe do some replacing. But what I will say about that is, even through the midst of some great tragedy that my neighbor was experiencing, being able to connect in that way and find that reciprocity and kind of helping each other, it feels good to do that. And I think that's a very Venusian thing, a very Venusian expression, where we might not have connected if there wasn't some challenge. And maybe that's something that Venus is helping to show us as well, is how do we make connections in our life and how do we maintain them, even if it brings us a little bit outside of our normal comfort zone. Jolie James is here. What's up, Jolie James? Nice to see you. Hope you're doing well. Jolie says it feels like Pisces risings are getting some relief finally. Yes, I think maybe from Saturn stationing direct, absolutely. I will say, Jolie, that we are going to have some mutable squares and oppositions that will affect the mutable rising signs, pretty much all of them, Pisces, Gemini, Virgo, and Sagittarius. Because oftentimes when we have aspects that are coming together in our angular houses, 1, 7, 4, and 10, if you're using, I use whole sign houses, so those whenever a planet is moving through those particular houses is when I feel that those are activated. We could feel pulled in a lot of different directions. So your Pisces risings still might feel pulled in a number of different directions, but I do think that Saturn moving direct is going to be helpful. Probably understanding what needs to change in the structures within your life, and understanding what your responsibilities are and which of the dreams that you have, which I believe oftentimes Pisces risings and Pisces types have a lot of really rich inner lives and a lot of dreams that they're pursuing, whether it's an internal state or trying to make it real out in the world. But understanding which of those are possible as manifestations and which ones we have to let go of can actually lead to some really successful outcomes. So I'm wishing all of you Pisces risings and Pisces folks well this month, and we'll try to break it down for you. Okay, so that's our, malefic enclosures. Now, let's start chatting about Sagittarius. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the Decans of Sagittarius webinar slide to the screen. We have 1 day of the sun in Sagittarius 1. Okay, the first part of the first day, the sun will still be in the first 10-degree section of Sagittarius. And I would say that normally I wouldn't spend too much time on that if there weren't important aspects coming together, but we have our new moon in Sagittarius 1 at 9 degrees of Sagittarius on the first day of the month. So we're starting off the month with a completely new lunar cycle. And we're going to be finishing off this Sagittarius 1 energy. Now, 9 degrees Sagittarius is an interesting place because it's very close to the fixed star Antares. And now that I'm thinking about sort of the connections with the I-Ching and the animal that I pulled for this, it's starting to make a lot more sense. But the new moon in Sagittarius 1 is conjoining and very close to a fixed star called Antares, which is the heart of the Scorpion. And this is a fixed star that really leads to potentially some obsessive tendencies, intensity of emotions, wanting to move towards a goal with speed, intensity, devotion, eliminating distractions. And with this first 10-degree section of Sagittarius, you can see it's syncretized with the 8 of Wands. And the Book of Tea and the Book of Thoth calls that the Lord of Swiftness, just the movement, liberated energy. If you think about the transition from Scorpio to Sagittarius, we are thinking about the liberated spirit that has been released after we have composted a form that wasn't bringing us vitality in the Scorpio part of the year. So now we've released some things that don't serve us, and now we have this energy. It's like, whoa, what's our new goal? What new body do we want to inhabit? And we've got this daimon or spirit, Loimos, which is the god of plagues. So you have to be careful with this decan to choose wisely what you are aiming your arrows towards. It's very easy to become a host, a parasitic host for someone else's vision if you're feeling confused or if you don't have something that is lighting your internal fire. Sometimes people can take advantage of other people's confusion and lack of direction. So be aware of that. We'll break that down in a little bit more depth here in a second, but just some themes of this new moon in Sagittarius: speed, movement, enthusiasm, but also propaganda. Like this is a Mercury ruled decan where we're sharing messages with great speed and rapidity, and a lot of them are based on our very deeply held belief systems rather than through gathering information and exchange of information. It's more about like, here, this is what I believe, take it or leave it type of thing. So you have to be careful about that. Mercury works best, I think, when it's leaving space for ambiguity, leaving space for asking questions. So be a little bit careful with this energy in the beginning of the month of making too many declarative statements, because you might be missing some details that you could get if you were more open to a back and forth type of reciprocal exchange. A vision or a quest, finding out what the new vision is. What kind of spiritual quest are you on at this point? And of course, plagues and viruses. I am a little bit concerned that through the end of this month, we might get some news about some illnesses potentially and or medicines, as Mercury is going to be stationing retrograde at 22 degrees of Sagittarius at the end of November, which is on a fixed star called Ras Al Hague, which is associated in the constellation Asclepius, the healer. And oftentimes when we have some important transits on that particular degree, we have news about diseases or new medicines or things of that nature. I hope it's just maybe it's a new medicine. Maybe it's something that helps us to overcome some kind of challenge. But I know that we're dealing potentially with the spread of avian flu at some point, and this is another signification of the first 10 degrees of Sagittarius being related to that god of plagues, Loimos. So I guess what I will say about that is just be very careful if you're circulating, and if you're sick, stay home and take care of yourself, and just be conscientious that we live in a communal society and try to do the best we can to contribute to the collective health. So questions you could ask yourself at this new moon: where are you aiming your arrows? What do you believe in? What is inspiring you towards motion? What are you going to do with this liberated spirit? Is this vision yours or another's? That's important. Sometimes we think that we're carrying out our own vision, but we've actually just latched on to a charismatic leader, and we're doing their bidding. We have to be careful of that. What is your truth? That's interesting. We talked a lot last week with Pluto and Aquarius about Pluto and Aquarius potentially making attempts to limit our access to information or to truth. And sometimes we have to dig a little bit deeper and work a little bit harder and look to multiple sources to be able to find the truth that isn't filtered through someone's personal agenda. It's very difficult to do these days, especially with the ways that we get put into these little echo chambers, just from the things that we click on, the people that we interact with. The algorithms are sort of working against us finding a multitude of truths, because they want to give you more of what you have shown them through your online activity that you want. And again, it's going to be really important that we are actively seeking multiple viewpoints. It's easy to not do that. It's easy to say, you know what, I'm too tired, I don't want to hear this noise, etc. But I think it's a great mistake to shut our ears down and to only hear what we want to hear. It does the most vulnerable people in society a great disservice. It makes us even more divided, and it doesn't allow us to see the humanity in people that we disagree with. Now, it's super stressful and challenging sometimes to deal with a faceless ideal online when you see people conversing in the chat, and I think it's harder for some people to treat people with respect when they can't look them in the eye and see what they're saying is hurting a real human being. So I would try as much as you can to relate to human beings rather than ideologies during this new moon in Sagittarius period. It's very easy for us to get lost in ideological different pathways that have been carved out for us either through our past experiences or through the people that we've related to, or even through our ignorance. And I think that that's super important. Sometimes we fear something that we just don't understand, and through asking questions and hearing multiple perspectives, I think we can get a much clearer understanding. How can you get others on board? Let's say that you do feel very strongly about something. Maybe you have to deliver a message through your enthusiasm to get people on board to a movement that will help benefit others. It works both ways. Like you have to choose what you want to be spreading, right? Do you want to be spreading disease or spreading hate? Or do you want to be spreading love? Do you want to be spreading good fortune, good news? You get to decide which of those things that you're going to be known for. That doesn't mean we have to avoid shining a light on the difficult experiences of life. It just means that you get to choose what you do with that knowledge and what we get to do collectively with it. And I think it's a lot easier to identify a problem without necessarily demonizing a specific group of people. That's something I'm really cognizant of right now as we're moving towards a different political structure in the United States. I think it's really important that we work on the issues themselves without necessarily having to ostracize one particular group of people. I think that to me is the adult thing to do. And it's very easy to want to find scapegoats, and especially amongst the most vulnerable populations that we have in our respective countries. And what I will say, I hope that you're hearing me as a group here, that we can be better than that, and we can be the adults in the room, and we can work on these challenges together without necessarily having to throw vulnerable people under the bus. So that's my Mercury and Sagittarius plea to you, I guess. That's hopefully trying to spread the good word. Okay. Cosmic Girl 101 is here. Good morning from Australia. Cosmic Girl is off to see the iconic Pearl Jam. Oh my goodness. That sounds fun. Say hi to Eddie Vedder for me. I was a Pearl Jam fan back in the day. I guess I still am on some level. That sounds like a fun show. Okay. So we've broken down the new moon in Sagittarius. I'm going to bring up the chart of this, just so we can kind of see this together. All right, here we go. So now you can see on the chart this new moon in Sagittarius, the first day, okay? And we got 9 degrees Sagittarius here. And I think that Mercury is going to be co-present. It's retrograde. It's still moving backwards. We're not quite to the Kazemi point at this new moon. This lunation is going to be hosted by Jupiter in Gemini. So it is in opposition with its host. Jupiter is trying to provide resources for this new moon. And we're going to be seeing sort of this building opposition of Mercury and Jupiter, and also the square starting to come and formulate between Mercury and Saturn. So that's our big T-square we're going to be talking about, is we've got Mercury and all of the Sagittarius planets opposing Jupiter, and then we've got these squares to Saturn. So being pulled in a lot of different directions, right? Kai has a nice comment, says, that is the good word. I always enjoy your level-headed takes. Thank you, Kai. I appreciate that. Sometimes we just have to kind of restore sanity, right? I think it's so easy to get destabilized by the types of rhetoric that we hear online. And I think that really communicating with each other from our shared humanity is really important. Again, this is absolutely not to say that we should ignore the tragedies and call out bad players in the game. I think that's really important. It's going to be important to continue to have the courage to do so. But again, relating to people on their human level and sharing what we love about the world is equally as important. I challenge, I think this is an interesting challenge. This is something I'm challenging myself to do too, because sometimes it's easy for me to get lost in the negative spiral. Sometimes I challenge myself to share at least one or two things I'm grateful for everything that I am upset about. And I think that balanced gratitude with calling out injustice and negativity and etc. is really important. Again, I do not want to fall into the trap of ignoring the difficult things in the world or spiritually bypass those things. But I do think having a balanced viewpoint and that is rooted in gratitude, it helps you to appreciate why you are standing up to injustices and why you are doing that hard work, that painful, stressful work of fighting back against oppressive ideals, I guess you could say, or actions. Because you know what is in your heart, and you know what you're going to do those very difficult interactions. You know why. I think it's super important. It bolsters your spirit. It gives you courage. So appreciate you, Kai. Lauren says, this cross of Mars, Pluto, and Mercury and Jupiter is very, tell me the truth, I dare you. I challenge that out of bounds Venus to intercede, dare you to love, dare you to listen. Yeah, I like that. It is sort of a revolutionary act, I think, in times like these, to come from a place of love and understanding and peace. It's so easy to fall into the trap of pointing fingers. That's the easy way out to me. It takes a different type of strength and power to come from big love, right? And to actually listen to people, even if you vehemently disagree with them and they're making decisions that do affect the people that you love, being able to try to meet them with the same love that you are hoping for yourself. I mean, to me, that's the golden rule is really important. That was my spiritual kind of foundation growing up. My dad wasn't a super religious person, but he did believe in the golden rule, and he was like, treat others the way that you want to be treated. And I really do believe that. And if we want to be treated with love and respect, and we want people to listen to us, we have to be able to do that, even when we see people that are falling off of that reciprocal relationship. Taku, how you doing, Taku? Says, hi, Spencer. I see that you have Ceres displayed on that chart. Do you work with it often? Um, I have Ceres and Chiron on here. I think it's interesting. I think that the asteroids are very interesting as far as giving us a little bit of insight into that. I would say that I work with them less than I do some other traditional techniques like zodiacal releasing and things of that nature and annual perfections, stuff like that. But I do think it can give us some insight into where we desire nurturing for Ceres in particular, how we want to nurture others. I was thinking about this the other day. I have a client who has Ceres in the fifth house, and she's a caretaker for a special needs adult, and her child is a special need adult, and she's got Ceres in the fifth house. She does a lot of her caretaking with her children in her personal life. I have Ceres in the 11th house. You're watching Ceres conjoining Venus in action right now, attempting to caretake for my community in a very public way. And that's really one of the things that this channel is something I aspire for it to be, is something that feels nurturing to people. In people of very diverse backgrounds, with Ceres being in Gemini. So yeah, I think that there's some really interesting insights that we can see from that, Taku. And I appreciate you. Where are you joining us from, Taku? I'm always curious where people are joining us from around the world. Okay. Let's see. Now, let's continue to break down this new moon in Sagittarius. Okay. We get some nice things coming in here. Well, I'll get to that in a second. Let's keep going with the new moon in Sagittarius. What are we thinking about with this Jupiter retrograde in Gemini, second decan of Gemini, hosting this Sagittarius new moon? Well, it's in opposition to the new moon. So we're having to balance some opposing forces, and it's not always easy to resolve. Sagittarius is a sign from my studies that wants to unify body and spirit towards a specific goal based on a passionate belief. When we have Jupiter in Gemini, we are being fed distractions. We're being fed multiple pathways rather than a clear and direct path. And I think that that could be one of the main challenges of this new moon, is that we may have identified multiple things that we want to move towards, but our energy is going to be diffused and scattered if we try to pursue everything all at once. So that's really the challenge of this new moon, in my estimation, is how do we understand our limitations so that we can achieve something to the best of our ability, rather than scattering our energy in so many different directions that we achieve none of it. And you could see with the square here to Saturn that we really do have to understand our limits. Okay, and this Saturn's going to be really hitting, the new moon is going to be hitting that Saturn. It's going to say, you want to move quickly, but you're probably going to have to slow down because you don't have all the information yet. And this Mercury retrograde, especially in Sagittarius, there's probably some things that over the course of Mercury and Sagittarius direct, we've skipped over important details because we just wanted to get it done. We just wanted to move forward towards our chosen goal. So the slowdown comes both from Mercury retrograde and from the lunation running into Saturn. So try to do your best to hold some of those multiple viewpoints, to keep being open to exploring, I think, and then choosing the things that are your highest priority to pursue rather than trying to do everything all at once. Jolie James says, I had a boss once say that you earn the right to speak about giving presentations to groups, and this reminds me of that in a way. Yeah, right? I mean, you earn it through your kindness. You earn it through sharing of yourself, but also you earn the right to speak through listening to others. I think that's the other thing too. So yeah, I think that's a cool way of contextualizing it. Taku says, that's beautiful. Thank you for your feedback. I'm joining from Berlin, Germany. Oh, nice. That's awesome. So I'm glad to hear we've got another European friend here. And thank you for staying up later with us here and spending your dinner hour with us. So I appreciate you being here, friend. Okay, so that is our new moon in Sagittarius. I will do a full breakdown of this particular lunation in its own live stream coming up. So stick around for that. We've also, one other part of this is we've got Mars making a trine to this lunation as well. So we may feel really like moving forward and trying to figure out how to become a little bit more visible as well. The challenge of visibility with Mars in the first 10-degree section of Leo might be pressuring. We might feel the pressure to become more visible around this period of time. So keep in mind, both the moon and Venus are still going to be out of bounds at this new moon. So pace yourself. All right, so let's go back to our Sagittarius webinar. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the second 10-degree section, because the same day, we have the moon or the sun clicking over to the next decan. Now, we've established liberation. We've liberated our energy. We've freed it up from the old form that was potentially holding us back through trying to hang on to something that wasn't vital. And now we are trying to unify body and spirit to continue on to our chosen goal. Okay. T. Susan Chang has a really great way of contextualizing these three Sagittarius decans. One is the arrow, okay, in the first decan. The second decan being the strength of the archer or the bow, the tensile strength she talks about. And the third is when the arrow is hitting the target, okay, the plunk of the target. And we'll talk about that a little bit as well. So themes with Sagittarius 2, which Austin Coppock calls the bridle. Book of Thoth calls strength. Book T calls the Lord of great strength. Tenacity and courage. This is a decan where we are sometimes challenged in our pursuit of our goal through a nemesis that is maybe pushing back on our ideas and testing us and saying, is this really what you want? Is this really the goal that you want to move towards? So we have to be able to hold steady if we want to release that arrow with accuracy. So fusing body and spirit, our vision with our intentions, facing a nemesis, overcoming some of the pushback and adversity to that. Strengthening your will and resolve. Sometimes when opposition comes up to the goals that you have, the work that you're doing to overcome that is building your character. And you wouldn't have as good of an outcome if it wasn't tested or forged in the fire. Think of like a blacksmith hammering away at a sword that is very hot. Like, let's take the fire theme, right? Sometimes you have to do a lot of dirty, hot, sweaty work to create something that will actually slice through the obstacles. And that's sort of what we get with Sagittarius too. One important thing about Sag 2 is learning from our experience. And this, I think, comes from its relationship with the spirit Kore, which is the queen version of Persephone. We had a maiden version of Persephone in Aries. I believe it was Aries 2, the second decan of Aries. And that was the maiden version of Persephone, like the innocent return of spring, the young maiden. And here we have Persephone in her queen of the underworld form, where she has tasted the pomegranate fruit. She has learned from experiences, and now she's a great ruler. So the Sagittarius is about learning about our ideals and our beliefs through actually testing them instead of having them just be an intellectual exercise. So learning from your experiences. So questions you can ask yourself when the sun is moving through the second 10-degree section of Sagittarius to 10 degrees to about 19 degrees and 59 minutes of Sagittarius. How can you turn belief into action, right? How can we take those beliefs and do something with it? What vehicle is going to carry your vision? How will you overcome your resistance? What experiences can you draw upon to help get you through to the other side? What steel is being forged in the fire? And then finally, are you motivated by truth or are you motivated by dogma? That's really important. I think that when we are pursuing something based on a set of beliefs from our past, from our present, etc., it's very easy to stick with the belief even when we're shown information that requires a change of belief. That's one of the most difficult things to do, is to shift a belief when we're being shown new information, because oftentimes we hold those beliefs, we hold them out of nostalgia, we hold them out of being successful with those beliefs in the past. But what I will say is sometimes the present requires a different approach. Just because we were successful with something in the past does not mean that it's going to work this time around, even if the situation appears to be similar on the surface. I would also say that that's true for our fears. Every situation is different. And when we think that something bad is going to happen, we believe that something bad is going to happen based on our past experiences without meeting the current challenge and all of its intricacies and nuances, then we can sometimes call the very thing that we fear or make something worse even before it happens. So be careful of that during Sagittarius too as well. Let the information change you and change your method. Okay. Cosmic Girl says the new moon is conjunct my natal Neptune retrograde. Things that make you go, Cosmic Girl. Well, depending on what house that's in, a new moon conjunct Neptune. Sometimes I find that Neptune placements or transits to our chart, they just make me feel tired. To me, Neptune is a solvent. It dissolves the barriers and the boundaries between us and others. It can also create illusions, right? This is the cliches around it. But I think of Neptune as a great solvent where we're dissolving things. Sometimes what can be dissolved is our energy. So I often find that Neptune sort of dissolves my will sometimes, and I'm just a puddle on the couch. So I hope that this new moon doesn't leave you as a puddle on the couch, Cosmic Girl. So the ninth house. So yeah, I think this is an important one for you in the ninth house to really examine how your beliefs are created. Are you dealing with facts, or are you dealing with something that you wish is true but actually isn't through your experience? I think that's a really important thing when we have Neptune transits. Neptune transits in our chart, Neptune in our chart, I think sometimes can show us where we're hanging on to some idealized version of a belief or of something that we really need to get real about, right? We can over-idealize things. And in this case, in the ninth house, it could be your relationship to spirit. It could be your relationship to a teacher or to like a higher education, to travel. You know, be very careful about traveling when Neptune gets activated. So it's the deadlines and things that you might making for like catching the train or a plane or whatever, they can dissolve in a hurry. So just it's a good time to check in. Neptune placements, I think, sometimes require us to check in with our community to make sure that we are rooted in reality rather than just rooted in a projection of that reality or an illusion or an image of that reality, but that isn't actually grounded in our day-to-day. Okay, so that's our preview of Sagittarius 2. Let's bring the chart back to the stage, and we'll take you through the daily experience of this. I'm just going to take before I do that, I'm going to take a little stretch here. Do me a huge favor, friends. If you are here live with me today, please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, subscribe to my newsletter, a link of which you can find in the description of the video. That's a great way to stay current with live streams. It's a great way to stay current with any sales that we're going to have. Of course, we've got 20% off the Decans of Sagittarius right now, which is almost a 3-hour webinar on just all things Sagittarius. I might be having a holiday sale coming up soon as well. I'm not a huge fan of Black Friday, as some of my students probably know. I really just do not enjoy the throng of crowds descending on a store and, Heismaning each other for a television or like a washer and dryer or whatever it is. I don't know what people buy. I understand the impulse. I think one of the challenges of late stage capitalism is things become really hard to afford, and like a lot of us want to make people in our lives happy by gifting them things that they would enjoy. And I think I felt that desire to do that as a parent in the past. And sometimes it's hard to afford all those things, and you can get those deals, but try to pace yourself with it. And I will try to give something back to this community if you're interested in supporting my work as well through some discounts. All right, let's go back to our chart and talk more about the sun in Sagittarius 2. So what we are doing here is we are looking at this time period. We're going to go and we're going to start moving towards, I'm going to put this to a noon time frame here so that we can kind of just get an overview of each of these days. Okay. And we're going to move towards December 2nd. And on December 2nd, you can see that we have Venus making a trine to Uranus. Okay, so there's our Venus-Uranus trine. And this is coming right off of that new moon in Sagittarius 1. This is a decan for Capricorn with Venus at 24 degrees Capricorn that speaks towards administration of authority, being able to wield our power responsibly, to be able to take on the mantle of responsibility and manage not only our lives, but sometimes the lives of others. So there may be something where you're attracted to power, to taking on new responsibilities in your life and organizing your material structures. And you may have to do something in a very innovative way. One of the things I could think about with Venus in Capricorn 3 making a trine with Uranus in Taurus 3 is related to evaluating our past actions, materially or otherwise, and then trying to fix something that maybe didn't work very well. Oftentimes through surrender, through repentant prayer, etc. Sometimes we do things that are rash, and we have to kind of go back and redo something. I think that this particular Venus-Uranus trine could show us new ways to organize our life and new ways to take responsibility that we may not have thought of. This is a really fortunate relationship between these two planets to break out of our normal way that we work through wielding authority. And think about this too. I believe Venus is still going to be out of bounds while this trine happens. This could be the epiphany moment where we say, hey, you know what? Maybe we need to just organize our business in a very different way. Maybe this just isn't working. And we have to think about new ways to structure what we're doing so that we can work smarter instead of harder. I think a lot of us are pushed to the very limits of what we can do as individuals in our business, in our personal lives and balancing all of those things. And a lot of the times we're like, well, how do we get ahead? Do we just take on more and more work? And there is a point of diminishing returns with that. And I talk about this with my partner a lot because the two of us work very hard, and we are, my partner has a full-time job, and this is my full-time job, and we're often thinking about how we can expand what we're doing, but we're just a team of two, and thinking about how to work smarter rather than harder by taking on more and more and more is a conversation that the two of us have quite often. So I think this Venus-Uranus trine coming off of the new moon, how can you restructure the way that you are organizing the physical things in your life? All right, if we move forward to the 4th, we have a couple things. We've got Mercury coming into opposition with Jupiter. So I like seeing these things just in context. So now we've got Mercury starting to apply to the sun, getting ready for the rebirth in the heart of the sun a day later, right? It's moving, a couple degrees every day here. So that's interesting. So we've got the opposition between Mercury and Jupiter. And we also have the sun, a whole different experience here. The sun on the same day is squaring Saturn. So this is like a whole separate entity that's happening all on the same day. I like looking at these aspects in relationship to one another because you really can't separate this out. I think it would be somewhat of a fool's errand to just talk about them individually and not in relationship to one another in a holistic way. So here we have the moon hanging out with Venus. So the moon in its exile in Capricorn, where we're really having to work hard and push our bodies to the limits, where might be hard to find the nurturing that we desire around this period of time. And we've got Mercury retrograding into the heart of the sun in a very weakened position. Okay, when Mercury is retrograde and being burned up by the beams, all of the dross is being burned away. So our ability to move forward with commerce, business, communication, being able to find the information that we need can be challenging with this Mercury. And it's going to be opposing that Jupiter in the place that's expanding all of the options. So I think oftentimes Mercury-Jupiter contacts that are challenging, we can get a little bit puffed up with this placement and this aspect relationship. I think oftentimes when we have a sense of, when we communicate from a place of defensiveness or arrogance, a lot of it is because we're feeling overwhelmed or we're feeling like we don't have a handle on something. And I think this is the danger of this, is we may have so many things coming to us that we're trying to work through, and we want to appear competent. We want to appear like we've got a handle on all of it, that we could communicate in a way that sort of just runs roughshod over others. And that is something that we need to be careful of with this. Now, with the sun squaring Saturn, this is probably something that is blocking our path to manifestation. We just are coming off of a new moon in Sagittarius. We've started to understand all of the things that we want to put our new liberated energy, passion, etc., spirit fire, whatever you want to call it, towards. But we have to understand our limits. Jupiter in Gemini doesn't understand limits. Okay, it doesn't understand the limits of our ideas. It wants more ideas. It wants more options. Saturn in Pisces says, if you overestimate your ability to deliver on these ideas, that's when you will suffer consequences. Saturn is a planet of consequences. So the lead up to this period of time, remember, we had the sun in malefic enclosure. See where the sun was hitting from this ray of Mars was hitting on this side of the sun in the early degrees of Sagittarius. Even though it was a trine, it's throwing its its ray on that side, and Saturn was casting its ray to this more advanced degrees of Sagittarius from Pisces, and it was closing it in. And now that the sun is making this, completing this aspect to Saturn, it is being released from that. So I really feel like this December 4th time period is an understanding of what our limitations are. And once we finally come to terms with what we can't do, we will be able to make a plan to do what we are able to do. That's super important. When we understand what isn't possible, okay, through bashing our head against, Saturn through square, that actually will open us up to maybe paring something down so that we can be successful with what we're trying to achieve. And then that releases us from that feeling of being stuck, okay? So I think this is a really important turning point in the month where we are just going to come to terms with just our limits and come to an acceptance of what is actually possible rather than what we would ideally dream up, All right. So that's our December 4th day. Now that is leading us to the next day, which is our Mercury Cazimi. And look how quickly this is coming together here. So here is Mercury at 14 degrees of Sagittarius, in the heart of the sun, getting a download. I mean, when Mercury is conjoining the sun, think about the sun as an illuminator. It is bringing us light. It is bringing us clarity. So in this case, I think we might be starting to understand what we need to do to unify our body and our vision to be able to achieve maybe a more modest goal than we had originally thought of at the beginning of this lunar cycle. Okay. I think that with this coming off of the square with Saturn, we've probably felt a failure, right? I think we can learn as much through our failures that we can through our successes. Failure is very instructive, and it's very important to learn from our failures. I think that's the thing. Like, if we keep doing the same thing and failing at the same thing over and over again, depending on the circumstance, there are certain things that are out of our control. But if there's certain choices that we are stubbornly making over and over and over again, that can, lead to greater and greater suffering. So I think this is a really important moment to look to your past, look to your inner voice. I don't think that the answers that are going to come at this Mercury Cazimi are going to be from an external source. I think that when we have the retrograde conjunction with the sun of Mercury or of, of Venus, I guess, I think we see an internal experience and an internal voice and an internal wisdom happening. When we have Mercury direct Cazimi, sometimes we might get messages from a more externalized source, from a higher self, from an external teacher, etc. But this one is understanding ourselves well enough to know what we can do reasonably well without burning ourselves out, and what we need to do to rest and to sustain ourselves towards the finish line. Okay, so that's our Mercury Cazimi on December the 5th. Corinne says, the Mercury-Jupiter-Saturn T-square is baked into my solar return. Oh my goodness. Well, happy birthday, Corinne. And we'll work it out. We'll work all that out, and we'll break it down and help you to navigate that. And I'd be more than happy to get you on the right side of that T-square. Tarja T is here. What's up, Tarja T? Nice to see you. Greetings from Helsinki. One of our Finnish friends is dropping in. Hope you're doing well, Tarja. It's been a little bit. Nice to see you, and hope that you're surviving the snowy beginning of the wintry mix that you're probably experiencing there. It's not even winter yet, but the snow is happening. We had a snow the other day too. It was very pretty, but a little unexpected. I was like, oh wow, snow time. Okay. Now we get to the 6th of December, and the 6th is a pretty big day. So this is a big day here. This is where we see Mars stationing retrograde at about 6 degrees of Leo. And this is happening about 6:30 in the evening. Okay, so this is later in the day. I have a noon chart here that I'm going to keep here, but this is our retrograde moment. Simultaneously, Mercury retrograde is going to be squaring Saturn. So we went through the Sun squaring Saturn, and now a retrograde Mercury is going to square Saturn. This is one of our mutable squares that we've been talking about. So these two things obviously are related. They're happening at the same time. Maybe we are learning the limitations of our resources, of our ability to sway someone in an argument, potentially. It's important for you to connect Mercury with the houses that it rules in your personal chart. So you're going to want to look to the Gemini house and to the Virgo house in your chart and those topics to see what types of things you might be feeling some frustration over. In this particular random Aquarius rising chart, this would be the 5th house and the 8th house. So somebody with an Aquarius rising chart may feel some frustration over a shared resource related to their children or to a creative process or to a legacy that they want to pass on. Maybe there is something where they're feeling a lot of frustration with, maybe they're in a co-parenting situation and they're having some disagreements about who belongs where, or the parenting time, or something like that. That's one example that I could see with the 8th house, 5th house challenge. And maybe with the square from Mercury to Saturn, it's whatever this argument is or this challenge is, it's putting a great strain on your financial life. Maybe there's something with the school or something that you're working with, especially with Mercury retrograde. Maybe there's a program that you're trying to find resources for, but the resources just aren't coming through or something like that. Now, the good news about this particular day is that when Mercury squares Saturn, it's released from that malefic enclosure. Okay, so that is another point where we're like, ugh, we've got the Cazimi with Mercury feeling stuck between Saturn and Mars, but here we have this breakup of it. Now, you could argue, well, you could argue that the Sun is breaking this up a little bit, but it really isn't when it was in the Cazimi, because it's on the other side of Saturn. Okay, it's not even in where the Saturn's casting its ray. So we've got this malefic enclosure. Let me see. So let me hold on a second. Let me rethink that. It is the beginning of the malefic enclosure, not the end of it. So this is actually when the difficulty begins. Sorry about that, friends. A lot of details swirling around here. And with Mercury and Sagittarius, sometimes you'll get a little confused. So check that. The square to Saturn is the beginning of the malefic enclosure of Mercury. And it's interesting that it coincides with Mars retrograde. So I could see this playing out as getting some information when Mercury squares Saturn that is difficult, where you don't have what you need. You're being denied something. And that could lead to a feeling of not being able to move forward under our own power with Mars retrograding in Leo, and especially through competing with others. Mars in Leo 1 is related to the 5 of Wands. And the 5 of Wands shows a number of figures in a mock battle. And oftentimes we can feel a little bit demoralized when we're competing in a competitive field or something like that. And maybe you get some difficult news at this retrograde square of Saturn that leads to a sapping of willpower or strength, etc. I think that sometimes those moments can be instructive as well. I think sometimes when we understand that it's a tough competitive world, it behooves us to regroup sometimes. We have this myth that if we just go harder, faster, that we're going to achieve something. But I don't find that that's always the case. I think sometimes when we're just completely spent, or if we're feeling a little bit demoralized by a situation, sometimes stepping away from it can give us new perspective. I think that I've been doing this a lot with my partner. She and I both have a lot of work lately. And I happen to be slightly better at saying I need a break. I need to be horizontal on the couch reading a book or just doing nothing. She's got a Sagittarius 3 sun, and if you stick around to the end, you'll see why that it's a driving force that it's very difficult to stop with Sagittarius 3 placements, because there's a force called a non-K that keeps compelling us to keep going and for the world to keep spinning, that's associated with that 10-degree section. And like she and I had a conversation the other day where she was just getting frustrated and her effectiveness started to wane. And I said, why don't you just stop? Just stop. You're not achieving what you want by continuing to grind and bang your head against this wall. And she did, and we did something fun. And then the next day we were much more effective. We were much more ready to engage with something that was harder potentially the day before. I will also say that one thing I've realized about myself is that I have a limit to the amount of quote unquote work that I can do without sort of giving myself something fun to do, like a treat or a reward or whatever it is. Like there's just a part of my stubborn spirit that's like, I've worked and now I need to enjoy myself. And there's a point where I just cannot do anymore. And what I realize is that part of me that becomes resistant, like doing the grind work, becomes painful, just so painful. I'm like, I'm fighting myself. And if I just kind of sometimes give in and do something fun, then the next day I'm like, all right, I listened to my inner child. I listened to that voice. I acknowledged that I'm so much more effective than the next day. And I said, I did that fun thing. Now I can hit this work running. And I think that allowing ourselves that is really important. I think with this Mars retrograde, after the Mercury squares Saturn and comes into that malefic enclosure, it's going to be important to do some of that and say, hey, you know what? You've been working so hard. This time of year, my feelings on this type of year are mixed because it's the holiday rush, right? We are trying to create a beautiful experience that, I mean, for better or for worse, our childhoods and the media that we consumed as kids and into our adulthoods tell us that we have to have this perfect vision of a holiday season, whether it's Christmas or a different holiday or whatever. And there's all these things that are taxing us. There's the decorations, there's the gifts, there's wrapping the gifts, there's cooking, there's interacting with family that we don't normally see that can be stressful, especially if you're introverted. All of those things put pressure on you. Having to go out and engage with capitalism in a way that many people are uncomfortable with can be very stressful. I used to hate shopping at this time of year. I loathed it with every inch of my being because, first of all, it was crowded. They played the same shitty Christmas songs over and over and over again in the stores. And it was just overwhelming. And there came a point in my life where I think it was just through a meltdown that I said, I'm not going to do this holiday the way that people expect me to do it. Like, I'm going to get gifts for people or whatever, but I'm just going to take care of myself during this period of time. And this is something I think I've shared in the past, but the reason that I feel that this is so detrimental to our mental and emotional health is Sagittarius is a sign that is the last sign before the winter solstice. Traditionally, I feel like this would be a time of reflection, of slowing down, where the days became shorter in the northern hemisphere, where we're resting and trying to get recharged and see with a long range view where we might want to go next through reflecting on where we've been. And when we're forced into these roles that basically things like Hollywood create, of trying to uphold this really crazy standard, I think it can be really unhealthy to our mental and emotional and even physical health. So if any of you are listening to this today and you need some permission to just pare down your whatever your holiday experience is, I hope that I can be the voice for that. And people will adjust. You know, first of all, if it's trying to make a nice experience for kids, their expectations can be adjusted. Sometimes understanding that you can't always get everything that you want right when you want it is an important lesson too. And connect with your humanity during the holiday season rather than an ideal. Okay, we got some nice comments coming in here. Taku says, I think of the story of Sun, Saturn, and Mercury is also playing a role. Absolutely. The next time the Sun conjuncts Saturn in Pisces in March, Mercury will be stationing retrograde after that. Ooh, interesting. That's a nice connection to make. So keep an eye on that. That the experiences we're having in early December could be connected with the ones in March. Absolutely. Tarja T says, snow is nice in the middle of the dark season. Unfortunately, snow doesn't stay in Helsinki, south of Finland. Maybe White Christmas. Yeah, we'll see. There is something romantic about having snow during our holiday season. So that can be really nice. And don't get me wrong, I'm not like a bah humbug Grinch type of person, but I do feel like we try to uphold these unrealistic standards. And for what? For what? I think that the over materialization of a holiday is something that I will always sort of push back against. Many of these holidays, they have spiritual connotations, and treating them in a spiritual fashion rather than a strictly material one is important. And I would say that the other part of that is I think holidays function best because of the people that you have in your life, not necessarily how fancy your decorations are or how much food you have on the table. It's about the relationships that you're building. Those are the things that I enjoy and sometimes miss about the holidays now, especially as you get into a phase of your life where some of your family has started to pass on. And I often think about those people more than anything else. That was the thing. I can't remember half the shit I got as a kid for Christmas, but I do remember spending time with people. And I think that if we can reconnect with that, it can be so much more enriching. Jolie says, I can relate to all of it. It's more difficult to stop when you feel like you're doing purposeful work. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, because we're trying to make people happy. We're trying to share our bounty and generosity. I mean, it's Jupiterian season, right? But I think that we have to learn when enough is enough. And I think with a Saturn square in Sagittarius, it's Saturn in Pisces squaring the Sagittarius planets, we're going to have to understand our limits, especially this holiday season when we're having a lot to work with. We have a lot that we're having to work through as a community, and that can take its toll. And sometimes adding just one more thing can push us over the edge. So be careful of that edge. Taku says, by the way, your early comment on Ceres made me look where my own Ceres was. Just found out it was exactly conjunct my Venus in Taurus 1 as a Libra rising. Ooh, that's cool. So this is in your, let me just do some quick math, 8th house. So Ceres in the 8th conjoining Venus. You know, probably putting a lot of your nurturing energy into a partner and sharing your wealth and your gifts with the people in your life potentially. Through ancestor work also potentially with that. So yeah, that's cool. I'm glad that brought a light bulb moment for you, friend. Okay, let's keep going. So that's our Mars retrograde station. I'm just going to give you some more dates with the Mars part of it. So Mars is going to station retrograde at 6 degrees of Leo on December the 6th. It is going to retrograde back into Cancer on the 6th of January 6th, 2025. It is going to station direct at 17 degrees of Cancer on February the 23rd, and then move back into Leo on April the 18th. It's going to be out of bounds from the 30th to April the 7th. So this is going to be a retrograde out of bounds Mars. So something might come back around that you need to deal with, and be very careful about how you're engaging in conflict. There's also a few Mars-Pluto oppositions that I think are going to be important. We have Mars retrograde opposite Pluto on January the 3rd at 1 degree of Leo and Aquarius, and then in the direct fashion, we have it in April the 27th at 3 degrees of Leo opposite Pluto at 3 degrees of Aquarius. So a number of Mars-Pluto oppositions during this retrograde sort of journey that we're going through here as well. All right. Let's keep rolling. Yeah, and let me know if you have any questions on that. I'm always happy to further contextualize some of these things. So we move forward to December the 7th. And here we have a number of aspects perfecting. First, we have Venus ingressing into Aquarius. And it is going to instantly join Pluto on December the 7th. So I think this is probably a pretty important ingress, because it's going to be the first time, and maybe we had a Pluto-Venus conjunction in Aquarius, the first little taste that we have, but I don't remember that. Let me check. Let's check on that. So do we have Venus? Well, let's skip that for now. If someone could check that for me, go ahead, but I need to keep moving. So Venus is conjoining Pluto at 0 degrees of Aquarius. And this decan of Aquarius, we did a whole live stream on this last week. So if you want a deep dive on Pluto and Aquarius in the specifically the first 10-degree section, check that out. But this might be something where we're starting to understand some of the benefits of leaving this centralized power behind. Okay, like Venus is actually the face ruler of Aquarius 1. So this is Venus in its own face, where it's saying, you know what, we're having to leave behind the centralized power. We're having to go off into the fringe. We're going off into exile, but we're actually doing it joyfully, maybe, or we're finding beauty in the release, in the freedom. Maybe it's not exactly joyfully, because if we're going off into the fringe, there's probably some pretty dastardly things that we're rebelling against. But this could be a time where we're actually starting to see what our jobs are as far as resistance. Let's say that we've started to come to terms with the fact that we are going to have to change some things about how we interact with the collective. And many of us will, as we move into increased authoritarian regimes around the world. And we may have to start connecting with our local communities and with the ways to keep each other safe, like to stay safe ourselves and to keep the most vulnerable populations that often are scapegoated and that can be pushed into the fringes of society by a very challenging new governmental regime that would be coming in. So we might start to understand what we need to do to protect those people. We might start to understand how to utilize the resources that we do have. Sometimes it's our social capital with people. Sometimes it's our reciprocal relationships with our neighbors, right? I was telling you earlier today that I've been forming a deeper relationship with just some of my neighbors in this block. A lot of it through overcoming hardship. Like I was helping out my neighbor with his garage that caught on fire last night. And he had come earlier in the month and helped me with a tree that was leaning on the power line. He helped me cut up a tree that that the power company got off the power line, and he offered his help and his expertise to help cut up that tree. So just learning through some of these challenging times and crises is really important. So I think we're going to see something that will speak to that, and being able to create something beautiful with resources of a lesser quote unquote value is part of the Venus in Aquarius 1 significations. This is a talking about working with copper. Venus is related to copper. It is syncretized with copper, and copper is a metal that has less monetary value than something like gold or silver, but it has extreme utilitarian value as a conductor of electricity. So maybe there's something where you're working with less resources, but you're able to find a beautiful use for it with this, especially as it conjoins Pluto. So being able to smooth over those feelings of exile and create something beautiful from it, I think is part of this aspect on December the 7th. Now, something else happening. There is another set of aspects that are happening on this day as well. This is our Sun-Jupiter opposition. In addition to Neptune stationing direct. So if we take all of these in harmony, in chorus, we've got Venus and Pluto coming together, a potential finding beauty in going off into the fringe of society and finding our grace in our communal efforts. And many of this may be triggered by a feeling of overwhelm, right? We've got this Sun-Jupiter opposition where we've seen this happening with Mercury in opposition. Now we have to pay attention to the Leo area of our chart, the Leo topic of our chart, as the Sun moves in opposition to Jupiter. So just, I guess, would be careful about trying to overdo things. You may be really wanting to unify body and spirit towards your specific goal, but you may feel like you're running into a lot of distractions, and that can lead to some anxiety. That second decan of Gemini is related to the Nine of Swords card, and you can see someone who's lying awake at night, potentially having a nightmare or something like that. I'll report back on this particular Sun-Jupiter opposition, because Jupiter is going to be exactly conjoin my natal Venus with the Sun in opposition. Maybe we're getting clearer through this arrangement as to what we actually need to do, okay? Through the sobriety of Venus moving into an air sign that allows us to hover above our lives and see how our lives are connected with other people's lives. That can help release any illusions that we had of our isolation. I think this is something I was thinking about as I was woken up at about 4 a.m. with the sirens and everything. This neighbor's house was 2 houses down from me, like 100 yards away from my house, and watching his garage go up in flames, I was a little bit nervous that it was going to spread to our house. So understanding that when something negative befalls one of your neighbors, it does have the potential to affect you, and learning that we are connected with that. It's a tough but also a great lesson, because when we learn that lesson, we learn that helping others actually is helping ourselves and showing our self-love, as well as giving away. And that's a tough lesson to learn, but that's one that the indigenous cultures of the world really understood, and they had to understand to survive, and one that I think that we're hopefully moving back towards. So I had a nice comment that I haven't had the time to respond to on the Pluto in Aquarius talk, where I had started talking about the negative challenges of the United States empire kind of exploiting Southern Hemisphere countries to extract wealth, and the consequences of that, and the challenges of that, and the boomerang effect of that. And I had a really poignant reader point out to me that we've done that here and on this land as well, the extraction of resources here and the displacement of indigenous people. And I wanted to acknowledge that comment, and I agree with you 100%. And I think that being able to reunify or to atone for those mistakes or having a reckoning around some of those challenges is part of what this country is going to be going through as well as we move forward. Let's see. Kai did the research for me. He says, yes, there was a Venus-Pluto conjunction in Aquarius on February the 17th of 2024. So thank you for that, Kai. It's a communal effort here. So go back and check out what you were doing in mid-February of 2024 to be able to see some of the themes that might start to come back around for the Venus-Pluto conjunction around December the 7th. Now, this one's fairly interesting to me because it's almost at the same degree. Like it's basically the same degree with a few minutes difference. So those themes are probably going to be very important. And I wonder if you're in the research mood, Kai, if there were current events that might be Venusian and Pluto in their nature. If you see anything that came up in the news around that period of time, that might be an interesting exploration as well. Okay, so that's our 7th of December, Neptune stationing direct, potentially starting to understand what sacrifices are going to be necessary and that are going to be asked of us, especially with Neptune in Pisces 3. That decan is all about sort of like religious crusades and being able to, it's a Mars ruled decan. It's like, are you willing to fight for what you believe in? And we may be challenged to fight for what we believe in and fight for the underdog, fight for the people that don't have the ability to do so for themselves. I think this is going to be important moving forward. If you are in a position of privilege or a position of empowerment, how do you utilize that in the service of the people that aren't able to do so? And that's going to be an important discussion moving forward. Tarya T says, my Venus is in Aquarius at 4 degrees in the 8th house. Mars moving into Leo and Cancer is affecting my chart many months. Pluto started in Aquarius where I have a stellium and also my sun. May I live an interesting time. Yeah. So Venus in Aquarius in the 8th and Mars probably moving through your 2nd house then. Man. So are you having conflicts around your own resources versus a shared one with a partner or with somebody that you work with, something like that? Is there something that's brewing around that, Tarya? That'd be an interesting thing. Kai says February 6th was when Blue Sky launched. I was just looking at the chart a few days ago. Ooh, that's interesting. Yeah, and thanks for bringing that up because I just started a Blue Sky account, which is, if you're not familiar with Blue Sky, it's sort of a Twitter replacement that hopefully will be less toxic, misogynistic, and less run by a technocrat. That's the hope, at least. So I just made a new account, Spencer at spencermichaud.blue.sky or whatever it is, that ending that all of our handles have. So follow me over there. I'll be posting probably as much as I do on Twitter and Threads, which is not a lot, but it's a great way to keep in touch as far as announcements and things like that. Rachel Fletcher, Rachel Olone is here. Rachel, I get the Rachels. Sorry, Rachels. I think this is Rachel Olone from Ireland joining us. Says, good evening, everyone. Glad to hear I've joined another communal effort, Spencer. I'm a little late tonight after a busy week up to Friday. Lovely to check in on this wintry northern night. So it sounds like the snow is starting to reach all around here, especially those northern European places. So welcome, friend, and I hope that you're doing well. Okay, let's keep going. So we have broken down the Sun-Jupiter opposition on some level. Remember, the sun is going to be asking us to unify body and spirit to move forward towards our chosen goal. The opposition to Jupiter is splitting our energy in a lot of different directions. That's the big challenge with this one. We move forward to the 8th, and we have on the 8th our first quarter moon. So here is our first quarter moon. 17 degrees of Sagittarius and 17 degrees of Pisces. Now, this is one of kind of like our T-square here because we're just coming off of the opposition with Jupiter. All right. This is one of our mutable T-squares we've been referring to over the course of the show. So this first quarter moons generally are crisis points. First quarter moons are the ones where we're trying to bring something into manifestation. The moon is waxing, it's gaining in light. And this is the challenge point where I say, well, you're being tested in your manifestation skills. So we're being pulled in a lot of different directions, a lot of different distractions, a lot of different possibilities potentially. We're reviewing our options at this point. And our solar impulse is wanting to overcome through a test of will, or a show of force sometimes through our strength and courage. But the moon's going to be hanging out with Saturn, okay, part of that mutable T-square. And the moon's going to probably be activating Saturn and saying, hey, bud, are you overestimating your abilities? Okay. It is, again, going to be showing us, if we pursue our belief that nothing bad will happen if we just keep going and going and going and never stop or never reflect or never question our goals or our dreams or whatever it is, some of them will probably fail. Saturn is probably asking us to let go of some of them as well. So this first quarter moon, it's a dual Jupiter. It's dually hosted by Jupiter. To me, it's coming to terms with your own personal skill set limitations. That decan of Pisces, it's related to the Nine of Cups. It's also related to Sorcerer's Apprentice energy, sort of where someone is taking on responsibility before they're ready. They're trying to force the issue, like Mickey Mouse in the Sorcerer's Apprentice, where he's, the master has gone out and he wants to take up the hat and start doing all of the this is the image for this, is he's waving the wands and everything, and he's starting to animate all of the brooms and to do all the work for him, right? But he's in over his head, and the brooms keep bringing water, and eventually he's drowning in this sea of cleaning material, and all hell is breaking loose because he didn't respect his own limitations as a novice. So this could be partly what we're experiencing at this first quarter moon, is really understanding our limitations and not being ashamed or embarrassed if we don't have all the information that we need or all of the skills that we need to achieve our chosen goal. All that does is give you an awareness and an enlightened moment as to what you need to do next, right? Maybe you're not ready to launch the program or whatever it is, or the multiplicity of projects you have in your mind. Maybe you need to learn more. Maybe you need to study more. Maybe you need to gather some more information first. And understanding where you aren't quite there yet can help move you forward to inching closer to that goal. All right. That helps us finish Sagittarius 2. So before I move on to Sagittarius 3, let's take a little stretch break. These are our marathon sessions, the monthlies. We usually go about 3 hours or so. And we just got a lot of astrology to go to. I prefer to kind of do it in one big thing, and if you are listening over the course of the month, that's cool too. So take some time, stretch out a little bit. While you're doing so, stretch your index finger over to the like button and like the video. Subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications if you can. And sign up for our email list so that you know when we're going live and when we're having sales and new class offerings. I help share new products from Third Coast Mojo and sales for that as well. And yeah. And if you want to support the channel today, a couple things you can do. Just your presence alone is amazing. And all the comments that you put in here really do help as well. If you want to support the channel materially, you can go to buymeacoffee.com, or you can hit the little $sign in the chat today and do a super chat or a super sticker. I'm just stretching myself out and getting a drink of water. Okay. So now we are taking a look at the Sun in Sagittarius 3. So what I would like to do, so I'm going to bring my Sagittarius Decans webinar, which is on sale for 20% off till the end of Sagittarius season. I'm going to bring that to the stage here, and let's talk about Sag 3 as a canvas for all of these other aspects to be painted upon. So here we see the 10 of Wands, and we have a figure who is carrying a very heavy load, right? He's got a bundle of sticks. You can't even basically see where he's going. He's going. His home is there in the distance. He's in the last leg of the marathon. My favorite word for this decan is barn eager, which is basically when a horse is gone on a long, long journey, but he sees familiar signs and he gets a burst of energy that compels him to the finish line. Okay, so this decan Austin Coppock calls a horse's skull. And oftentimes, to be able to achieve our goals, we push ourselves beyond our physical limits. I witness this daily with a partner who has a 12th house Sagittarius sun. And I witness my partner push herself beyond her limits. And trust me, folks, I've tried to not only alleviate some of her burdens, but help her have a balanced experience. But trying to stop a Sag 3 from achieving something that they've put their mind to is very difficult. And part of that is because of a force called Ananke that is associated with this decan. And Ananke is the force that compels the earth to spin on its axis. It's the idea of inevitability, this like thing that's driving us, right? So you may feel driven to get to the finish line. I often see this decan in the people who have, I don't know if it's procrastinated, but are trying to do their last minute holiday shopping, right? Or something like that in America. And they're just like tired, exhausted, and they just have to get little Billy his whatever his hobby horse. I don't know. This will sound like I'm from like the 30s or something, but whatever the modern equivalent of that is, or little Bobby wants a PlayStation 5 or something, and you've gone to 10 different stores to find it, and you're just exhausted, but you're being driven by I could go a really negative direction with this, but generally we're driven by wanting to make other people happy, right? And I think that there is a feeling of responsibility with this Saturn-ruled decan, where we feel the weight and the burden of our responsibilities, and we want to do good for others with this decan, but we push ourselves way, way beyond our physical limits. And like Austin's name, this can have dire consequences. So sacrificing the body for the goal, hitting the target, right? We talked about with T. Susan Chang, the plunk of the arrow into the target, carrying a heavy burden and exhaustion. This is the sun at its very lowest declination before its turn of direction at the winter solstice with the increase of light. These are the darkest days. Oftentimes we think of Sagittarius as this happy-go-lucky, positive, enthusiastic sign, and it can be, but there is a world weariness, especially with this decan, where your Sag 3 friends are carrying, many of them are so strong, like Sagittarius, Jupiter, it gives you strength. I mean, think of Hercules, right? But everything has its limits, and this is where we run up against the limits of our belief, passion, etc. So the last mile of the marathon, brave and heroic acts, trying to achieve something by any means necessary. That's a danger of this decan too, is if we believe in something so powerfully that we're willing to do anything to get it. This also can remind us of the downsides of like Black Friday, where you see people trampling each other to be first in line to buy a television or something. I just find that type of experience very off-putting. Again, I understand the system that created that desperation, and I don't mean to make people feel bad if they're in that desperate of a situation. But I think that the by any means necessary type of experience, it's very dangerous. And we have to really check in with ourselves and our own beliefs. Like, we have to check in with, why do we feel so intently on whether we're going to disappoint someone if we actually did release some of these burdens. I have another client, friend, who has Saturn in this particular decan, and they are reckoning with the passage of time. And this was a person that was a strong person who was able to do a lot of physical labor and favors for friends, family, neighbors, etc. And with the passage of time and the accumulation of injuries here and there, the identity had started to shift around that. And that can be tough. And being able to delegate responsibility, sometimes when we completely identify with being the one that can carry all the heavy burdens for other people, it's very difficult to do so. I will say, I have Neptune in this decan, and sometimes I feel emotionally responsible for my community, of holding great burdens, for emotional burdens for my clients, my family, my community, etc. And I will tell you, the last few weeks, the emotional burden, it got a lot heavier. I'm realizing that I'm not going to be able to carry everyone's emotional burdens moving into these new years that we're moving into, these new circumstances, that it's going to have to be a communal effort, and that I don't have to carry everyone's fear, shame, disappointment. I can carry my part of it, but I'm going to have to rely on my friends and family to connect in that regard. And that's a really interesting Neptune realization, is the illusion of being able to carry that weight and that burden for everyone. It's an illusion. So wherever you have placements in Sagittarius 3, how can you learn to delegate, right? What's required of you to bring something to completion, but how can you receive help when it's needed? What spirit is compelling you or driving you? Is there a reason why you're pushing yourself beyond your limits? Is it necessary, or can it wait? What sacrifices are you willing to make for your vision? Sometimes we do have to make sacrifices to get to the finish line. I can appreciate that on some level, but you don't have to keep doing it to the point where the vehicle that you are trying to continue to push just keeps breaking and failing, because then you can't help anybody, right? Are you being true to your ethics in this pursuit? That's important. I think that there's some of the greatest atrocities are carried out because we so strongly believed in something that we are willing to do anything to achieve the ideal. So ideological challenges can come under these decans of Sagittarius 3, Pisces 3, Leo 3. These are all ones that are very motivated by our belief systems. What burdens are you carrying? And finally, are you acting as a hero or as a martyr? Sometimes when we carry other people's burdens for them, we're actually disempowering them. We're disempowering them from learning how to carry those burdens for themselves. And it can be another form of control. Sometimes we try to carry other people's burdens for them to make ourselves feel better and to make ourselves feel comfortable. This is something that I'm thinking about a lot lately, is sitting with discomfort a little bit more. And as a Taurus moon, Cancer sun, discomfort it's not something that I enjoy. I like helping to make people feel good and feel comfortable. But what you realize is that in itself can be a form of control. And when you let go of that need to control, you have a more honest relationship and experience with the people in your community. And I think this burden carrying part of this is really important. What's up, Robin? Robin is here. Nice to see you, Robin. Hope you're doing well, my friend. We're talking Sagittarius 3, and we're going to start breaking down some of the aspects of Sagittarius 3. So let's go back to so we're looking at the period of time between December 11th and December the 21st, leading up to the winter solstice, carrying that heavy burden to get to the finish line. So on the 12th, let's go to the 12th here. December 12th, we have Venus making its opposition with Mars. Okay. Now this is going to be happening a little bit, I believe it's going to happen a little bit earlier in the day because we've already got the passage of here. It's starting to separate in this noon chart. But earlier in the day and the lead up to that, the 11th, the 10th and 11th, we're going to start to feel this pressure with Venus and Mars retrograde opposing one another. I think that the Venus-Pluto conjunction is probably going to show us some of the things that we will need to do that are in service of our community. Okay? And Dimphie is, I think, acknowledging some of the things we just talked about with not being able to carry all the emotional burdens potentially for everyone and delegating. Or coming in late. Like one of those things. And when we have Venus opposing Mars in Leo, a retrograde Mars in Leo, one of the things that I think is very challenging with this axis, and I've lived this opposition, having a Leo ascendant in the 7th house, my descendant being in Aquarius, and having the nodes over this axis. Being able to feel like you are balancing giving versus receiving, being able to feel like the sacrifices that you are making for the collective aren't taking away from your sense of self and empowerment and individuality. This is going to be a really important theme moving forward, especially as we move further into the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction air age in Aquarius, with Pluto in Aquarius now, is how do we maintain our individuality, especially when we're going to have to give up some of our desires for the greater good. I know that that's tough to reconcile sometimes. Everybody feels like to take care of the collective, we're going to be missing out on something. Well, I have this great book that I'm excited to dive into by Robin Wall Kimmerer. Okay, it's called The Service Berry: Abundance and Reciprocity in the Natural World. And it's a continuation of some of her teachings in another beautiful book called Braiding Sweetgrass. And the main theme in that book is these reciprocal relationships that we see in nature, where trees, birds, animals, streams, rocks, they're all in this beautiful symphony with one another. And oftentimes when one is helping the other, they are receiving benefits in return. And it's this beautiful interconnected cycle. And I think that this is another opportunity to understand that when you help others, sometimes when you feel like you are giving up something that you want personally, first of all, I think that the things that we have to give up, a lot of times they're things we were pre-programmed to think would make us happy that don't actually make us happy. And I'm thinking about like great accumulation of masses of excessive wealth. That ultimately does not make you happy. Like, I think that there's a certain point where it does help, but there's a point of diminishing returns. And you can see this with oligarchical type billionaire folks that despite having everything that they could possibly want materially, it's never enough for them. There's always more power. There's always more resources. The chase is insatiable. And when we release the ability to understand, or when we release the desires that we have that aren't even actually achievable or healthy, and understand that when we share with others, we are actually trying to move towards a relationship that does feel satisfying, something where we do feel good. I'll tell you what, like today I felt really good helping my neighbor. Like if you're coming in late, my neighbor's garage burned to the ground yesterday, in like very late at night. And this morning, like I've been offering to help him, and we started moving some fence material to help keep his dogs in his yard. And it felt good. It felt good to help somebody else. It felt satisfying. And it feels good to help people. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, that's the thing that we've lost touch with. We've lost touch with how good it actually feels to embrace other people's happiness and success. Now, I understand that sometimes we, as empaths or people in this field, we give beyond the point that feels comfortable. And we do have to understand where are the limits of giving. That's important too, because you do deserve to have safety, security, things of that nature. But I think that sharing what you have with others, and the Venus and Mars retrograde is going to teach us over this axis, does not mean that you will necessarily experience lack. You will actually experience a fullness that you can't possibly experience if all you're doing is working only for your own needs and your own self. I really believe that. And that's a tough lesson to learn. We all have come from various states of self-interest. Most teenagers go through a fairly narcissistic phase because they're trying to figure out who they are. And to do that, you have to take your own interests into account. But hopefully, if we're healthy, we grow out of that and find a balance between what are skills that we bring to the world and how we can empower others as well as ourselves. Okay, so that's our Venus opposition with Mars retrograde. Again, we're probably dealing with moving into exile, decentralization of power, and running into the challenge of our individuality, and maybe even competing for a spotlight or for resources. But it's a mock battle. Again, that's the Five of Wands card, where it's not a life or death struggle. Sometimes we feel like we are competing with others, and we feel like we're in this competition where it doesn't actually have to be a competition. And I get it. Like the way that we've set up our economies in Western civilizations, especially through capitalism, it forces us into these competitive relationships because we feel like we need to corner the market on attention, corner the market on our niche, and that if someone else succeeds, that takes away from our own success. It's so easy to fall into that trap. But what you see when you start working together with other people and truly are invested in their success, not just for what you can get out of it, but truly invested in what they're doing to succeed, it's a completely different feeling. All right. So let's keep going. Let's go to the 13th. And here we have the end of our Mercury malefic enclosure. Okay. So we had Mercury here with Mars on casting its ray in the early degrees of Sagittarius. Here's what a malefic enclosure is. And we had Saturn that was casting its ray on this side of Mercury without any of these other planets breaking it up or interceding. Now, once we have the 6-degree conjunction, or sextile here, Venus is going to start casting its ray in between Saturn and Mercury. See that? So once we have this sextile, Venus starts breaking this up. So there's something that our community is going to help us break out of this. Our ability to embrace objectivity is going to start helping us out of this. Understanding our roles and our connections in these communal spaces is going to help break us out of this state, this mental state probably of feeling stuck or trapped. We also have Mercury emerging as the morning star. So you can see here at 6 degrees of Sagittarius, it's going to be separating by roughly 15 degrees. Now, your mileage may vary as far as what your arc of separation is with Mercury, but that's a standardization that I've learned from Demetra George. And this is when Mercury when it becomes visible again and we're receiving messages. This is what Robert Schmidt would call a moment of phasis. So we might receive messages around this period of time, especially through our community, okay, through our group efforts, that will help us break out of a limited mental state where we feel like we just can't make progress, okay? So pay attention to the messages that you receive on December the 13th. They may actually help you to see things from a less limiting perspective. Now, all of this is helping us to build towards a full moon in Gemini 3. So let's go forward to the full moon on December the 15th. And here we have the sun at 23 degrees of Sagittarius and the moon at 23 degrees of Gemini. All right. This is a Neptune colored full moon because we have Neptune making a T-square between the sun and the moon. So again, we're in the final decans, the final 10-degree sections of mutable signs. Those are very volatile places. They are the transition between one season to the next, one energetic state to the next. And in this case, we're going to be feeling like we're trying to get to the finish line, that we're tired, we're so exhausted from the journey. And we're going to have to balance what we can carry to the finish line to what we absolutely cannot. If you see the 10 of Wands card, you see someone carrying that heavy burden. Well, if you look at its opposite card, the 10 of Swords, which is related to Gemini 3, you see someone with 10 swords in his back who just couldn't do it. Like one of those options of exploration had to be released. He couldn't carry everything. So this is probably the point where we say, you know what? If we're going to achieve the goal, some of these options are going to have to be released. And we have to be very careful about being realistic about what we can and cannot do because of the square to Neptune. Like, you may feel like this is so important. It's part of your identity to get this whole thing done. You know, like that the world's going to collapse if you don't do this one particular thing. But with the square to Neptune, we have to be very cognizant of how we are putting our energy out into the world. You know, that's a Mars-ruled decan that Neptune is moving through. This is the sacrifice, you know, like the martyr. This is another place of martyrdom. I think those final degrees of mutable signs, they all can feel like martyrdom because there's these changes that are happening, this giving up of something. Virgo 3 is the passing on of a legacy, getting rid of our material possessions, passing them on to the next generation, right? We're releasing ideas that no longer serve us in Gemini 3, or pathways that no longer serve us, so that we can, you know, infuse all of our nurturing energy into the one idea that we want to bring to full flowering. You know, Sagittarius 3, we're releasing some burdens that we're carrying so that we can start building once again from that low solar period. Okay, the return of the light. We're trying to just get things done from the previous solar cycle. Maybe releasing our old beliefs. Okay, and then in Pisces 3, we're merging with the collective on some level, so that we can finally move forward. So that we can finally move forward with a rebirth of the sun in Aries and into its exaltation. We're learning to infuse meaning into what we're doing so that we can actually individuate with a sense of purpose in the transition from Pisces to Aries. So we've got this full moon, again, letting go. We've got the Mars-Mercury trine. That's a feature of it. We've got Saturn still in a whole sign square, but Saturn and Jupiter are going to be coming more into arrangement with one another as Jupiter retrogrades back into the square with Saturn. So an increased tension between Jupiter and Saturn. All right. The other part of this full moon that I think is important and that you don't see in the chart, but you will if you move it just a few hours forward, is that Mercury is stationing direct at this full moon. Okay? So here we have the full moon, and then we have the Mercury stationing direct. So that realization of certain paths that we can't possibly continue on will help us understand what directions we actually can move towards. And remember, Mercury is in its own face in the first 10-degree section of Sagittarius. This is a place where we want to move with rapidity towards our chosen goal. So by actually releasing some of the options, it may help speed us towards the options that we actually can make progress on. So I think that that's what we're feeling with Mercury starting to station direct. Finally, we get to move forward because we've eliminated the distractions or the things that are just not even possible. We get to the 18th of December. And here we are, I'm going to go back to the noon chart so we can kind of see this from a noon perspective. So here on the 18th of December, we are going to be working with that Sun-Neptune square, okay? So we've touched on this a little bit already, but here's the Sun at 27 degrees of Sagittarius and Neptune at 27 of Pisces. So this is where we're really starting to feel I think there's almost a dissolving quality of the ego with these squares. Again, we can delude ourselves if we're not dealing with things in reality with this square. But I think also we can surrender to a higher power or whatever you want to think about it with Sun-Neptune square. Again, I feel like Neptune as a solvent, often when it's in a difficult relationship like a square or opposition, actually just like is almost like a power outage for that planet. So we might be feeling a little bit of a power outage around the 18th of December, like where we're feeling just overwhelmed, drowning in tasks, etc. So I think that one of the things that you can do if you know this in advance, it's really important. Before you get to Sagittarius 3, okay, before we get to December the 11th, how can you pace yourself so that you aren't saving all of those tasks, whether they're holiday tasks, whether they're taxes? I don't know. Sometimes people are doing things with their tax, the end of the tax year, like donations or something like that. Purchasing things for your business at the end of the year. How can you not save those to this time period and pace yourself now instead of leaving it to the last minute? What you're doing is you're giving future you a gift. So if you want to have a good holiday season moving up, a good Sagittarius season leading up to the winter solstice, how can you break things down into manageable pieces from today to this period so that it's not, the pressure isn't building up, right? Like I have this program I use, it's called Asana, and it breaks up my tasks into manageable pieces by keeping track of it in a certain way. And I feel like it's the only way I'm able to achieve things, especially with sometimes having some attention challenges. I will sometimes get into a mode where if I can't see the smaller tasks, I just, out of sight, out of mind type of experience. So how can you write those things down with manageable deadlines and then stick with it? You know, this is the secret of a lot of people's success. It's just persistence over time. It's really important. Like I would say this is the way that I've created any type of modest success that I've had in my life, is just continuing to show up. You know, this is a Taurus midheaven, Taurus moon talking to you, saying, show up, do the best job that you can do, rest and relax, show up again the next day, do the best job that you can do, rest and relax, into infinity. So hopefully that will help you with this Neptune square with the Sun. Now, when we get to the 19th, we are looking at, excuse me, a trine from Venus to Jupiter. So this is our benefics coming together. This is one of the nicer moments, I think, of the month. Let's put it in green. So here we have Venus making a harmonious trine to Jupiter in Gemini, in the second decan of Gemini. Venus is in the second decan of Aquarius, excuse me. I think that one of the things that I like about second decan of Aquarius, I actually really like that decan. I don't know what it is about it, but I like all of the middle decans of the fixed signs, the Tiferet, experience, the sixes. And it's a balance point. It's a really nice balance point from one energy to the next. And Aquarius 2 is all about transitioning from one shore to the next, being able to communicate with the haves and the have-nots, the center and the fringe, being able to be ferried across calm waters to the previous shore, or to the next shore, I guess you could say, from the one situation to the next. So to do that, you have to have a sense of objectivity. You have to be able to see where you're going and sometimes you need a guide, right? This could be a nice moment where fate is guiding you towards the next shore, and where you're understanding how to balance all of the different pathways and ambiguities to move forward. I think part of the challenge with Jupiter and Gemini is there's a lot of things that remain unresolved. And I think with this trine with Venus to Jupiter, we could have a really sober understanding of all the different pros and cons of each pathway that will actually lead to movement, okay? That will lead to some of the realizations that come as we move into the sun's journey through Capricorn. So just take a nice moment and really try to look at your life from that higher eagle's eye, that eagle perspective, where you're soaring over your life, just taking stock of things. If someone comes to help you and guide you from one shore to another, try to be open to that. Don't close yourself off to that advice, to that helper, etc. Especially with Mercury still moving through Sagittarius, sometimes it's easy to speak when we should be listening. So this is a good opportunity to receive help from your community, and maybe even in ideas that you didn't think were possible, just by taking a step back and trying to embrace the objectivity in your life. Okay. Man, I'll tell you, my partner is cooking something that smells super good right now. It smells like she's baking. We've been on this the seed cake kick. I've been reading The Hobbit with my Hobbit group, and we've been looking at recipes from the world of Middle-earth and Bilbo's seed cakes that he shares with the dwarves that come to his door in The Hobbit. We've made a version of that, and they're delicious, and I think one is cooking in the oven, so it's making me hungry. So let's take this opportunity with the sun in Capricorn 1. Let's take another stretch. Do me a huge favor. If you haven't already, if you came in late, easiest thing you can do to support the channel is just your presence here and your comments. But if you could like the video, that helps. Subscribing if you're new, hitting the notification bell, subscribing to the newsletter if you haven't. If you want to make a material donation to the work that I'm doing here today and help with all the prep and all of that, and buying me the gift of time, really, to do all of this work, you can make a donation with the $ in the chat, or you can go to Buy Me a Coffee at buymeacoffee.com. You can also support the channel by scheduling a reading or through purchasing a webinar, which this Decans of Sagittarius right now is 20% off. Okay, so let's go back to Capricorn. So here we're going to start taking a look. We're in the home stretch here, the final decan of December. Actually, we'll have one little day of Capricorn 3, but there's really not any significant transits during that, so we'll save that for January. So here we have the decans of Capricorn. And this is from my webinar on Capricorn, each 10-degree section. And here we see a shift from elements, from fire to earth, and from wands to pentacles in the tarot. And here you see a lemnisket, which is the path that the sun takes across the sky over a solar year. And you can see these are the changes of direction. Okay, here we have another shift of direction at the winter solstice, where the days start to become longer again, and the night is starting to become shorter. So this is a real important turning point, Capricorn 1, return of the light. Austin Coppock talks about descent into matter, which he describes as a headless body. So we're dealing with a flash of material insight. We're taking this to me, this decan is a lot of taking stock of our material resources, taking stock of what materials we have that will allow us to build the new structures for the new solar year. This can also necessitate a change of location. Oftentimes I've found clients with Capricorn 1 placements have moved a lot, and they're always trying to assess the benefits and challenges of a new location, the genus loci, the protective spirit of a place. What's the vibe of a place? What are the laws of the new land, right? It's another opportunity to look backwards on the year that you just came from and to look ahead. I prefer to make my New Year's resolutions during the winter solstice days, the Capricorn 1 days. I often find myself acquiring the resources I need for the year ahead, whether if it's in a new piece of equipment to do the work that I'm doing, or a book or something like that for a project that I'm working on. This is a period of time that, before the tax year ends, if you're a self-employed person, oftentimes people make purchases. So those are all types of things that you might experience with Capricorn 1. So questions you can ask yourself at this winter solstice. Where are you going? Where have you been? What is being set in motion? What new process, what new material process is being set in motion? Where's the best place to build your structures? What location is best? What idealistic location is best? What are the new ideals that you want to bring into reality? What are the laws of the new land? There's always a kind of a shift in our, often in our physical experience around this period of time. Is your vision sound, or is your focus too narrow? Okay, this is an important thing to get realistic about what you're doing with a Saturn-ruled sign. And then finally, how can you inhabit this body in order to redeem or heal it? A lot of that is related to the spirit in this decan, Asclepius. So Asclepius is a healer. Of course, the ship surgeon of the Argo, who was smote by the gods because he was able to heal so well that he kept bringing people back from the dead, and Hades was like, I need souls, and Zeus was like, fine, I'll smite him with a thunderbolt. So the first two decans of Capricorn are Asclepius and Hygeia, Hygeia being related to health. So checking in with our bodies, checking in with our health, so that our vehicles are in good shape to be able to carry out the tasks that we are deciding we want to give it. Rachel says, this is reminding me of the Lord of the Eagles rescuing Bilbo, Gandalf, and the dwarves. Ooh, yeah, I like that. All right. Rachel says, I was writing this right when you started talking about seed cakes. Yeah, Rachel is in our Hobbit group, and there's so many interesting themes that come through diving into the world of Middle Earth. I'm really enjoying just getting to know this world and all of the details, but also having a new mythology to be able to see our lives within, right? To be able to have people who are going through archetypal struggles and what they do and what skills they have to move forward. And the Eagles rescuing Bilbo, Gandalf, and friends, having some sort of divine intervention that helps us overcome something. Like as we were talking about, Rachel, I'm assuming this is in reference to Venus in Aquarius, right? Just taking that 30,000 foot view to rise above our lives and to see it from this higher perspective to get ourselves out of this muck, right? To be able to have a clearer vision of moving forward. So yeah, I like that, Rachel. Aaron says, I have my moon here in the 4th, and I have moved a lot. The next new moon will be conjunct my natal moon. Okay, so we're getting some confirmation in some of these themes, right? Like having the moon in Capricorn 1, especially in the 4th, like related to your place of residence, your domicile, and the moon being a little bit of an uncomfortable, being a little uncomfortable in that position. And moving a lot can be tedious, right? That can be really challenging. But I'm sure that you've had to understand all of the new laws of the land, like meeting new neighbors, meeting new communities, right? And oftentimes what that can do is that can just make you a very resilient person. If you have like a Capricorn moon or something where you've had to move a lot, the resiliency that Saturnine people have can be really amazing. All right, so let's take a look at some of the themes that we might be going through. We'll bring the chart back to the screen. We're in the home stretch here, friends. Thank you for sticking it out with me here today. Aaron says, yes, I am resilient and self-sufficient. Yeah, and this is something, this is a gift from the gods, right? I oftentimes that I see people bemoaning their charts and say, my chart's just so shitty, blah, blah, blah. Or like, and they're looking at it through a lens of dignity, traditional dignity. But I will say this, I know some of the most resilient and people with the best characters sometimes have what you would consider the most debilitated charts, the most challenging charts, because you kind of had to overcome some challenging hands, right? And that makes strong people, right? Sometimes if our chart is just so juiced up with quote unquote good fortune, we're never tested. And that can lead to a feeling of both entitlement, but also just kind of this, I don't know if softness is the right word, but when things are a little bit too easy, when someone who has a great chart faces actual crisis, which oftentimes we do, no matter how great a chart looks, it's easy for those folks to fold because they haven't been tested. So just love all of the parts of your chart as teaching experiences, and I think that that's a great way to go through life. So I'm glad to hear that, Aaron. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the transits. So we're going to start off this period with our last quarter moon. So here we have the moon. Let's go forward to the 22nd, and we're going to move to, I'm just going to put it on the chart here. This is our sun squared the moon. So there it is. So 1 degree of Libra moon conjoining the south node, by the way, squaring the sun in Capricorn 1. So this is a different type of quarter moon. This is the last quarter moon. It's another crisis point in the lunation cycle. And I say that loosely. Not every quarter moon is going to be like some great tragedy. Sometimes it's just having to overcome a challenge. Last quarter moons are the challenge of releasing something so that we can get ready for the next cycle. It's a waning moon. We're releasing light. We're disseminating that light out into the world, and now we're facing this need to contextualize it all for the next cycle. So in this regard, we are having a sun impulse to start building new structures, and we're analyzing where would be the next great place to build our empire or whatever it is, or to build our community, if we're going to take the colonization language out of it, which we should start doing because I think that that's important. But we also are releasing maybe a dependence on someone else. Maybe we have had a partnership that has been fortuitous for a long period of time, but maybe it's outlived its efficacy, especially with the moon conjoining south node. Like this could be the end of a working partnership or something like that. Maybe we need to take more of an individual perspective on things and take more individual action to actually move forward to whatever our new dharma or challenge is. Maybe we also need to release our righteous indignation around what we consider fair or not. It's very easy to compare ourselves to others and say, well, that person has this or that, and I don't have that, and that's not fair. And the first decan of Libra can show us where we might be feeling this righteous indignation at things not being equal. Now, sometimes that's really important, and we need to feel that anger. That there's a spirit in that decan called the Uranes, and Uranes were monsters that people would pray to punish criminals who had gotten away with crime. But since the moon is conjoining the south node, that feeling of righteous indignation may be getting in the way of building our new goal, structure, etc. So how do we release that? How do we release that feeling and recognize that what we consider unfair, sometimes we don't have the entire picture. You may see someone who has something that you want, and you may not completely understand the cost behind that, emotionally, physically, spiritually, etc. You may not also understand that fortune is a wheel, and sometimes people are at the top of it and they come crashing down, and sometimes birds that fly too high lose their song. I think that is a line from the I-Ching. I believe it's hexagram number 62, which talks about small accumulation, paying attention to the details. I've often gotten that hexagram in my life, especially in regards to my own career and things of that nature. I used to have a very grandiose, ambitious vision of what I wanted to do in the world. And it was mostly related to music, and I wanted to be like the Beatles or something like that. I wanted to have that type of impact. And I continuously got that hexagram in regards to what I was doing. And it was teaching me that in my own personal life, I have a Virgo stellium, paying attention to the small parts, the personal relationships, the small one-on-one relationships, the local community, the community college songwriting class where you're helping people achieve their dreams and things of that nature is just as important as the grandiose stages where you think that might be what you want, but you don't really see that there's a cost within that. A lot of the things in my life were forcing me towards balance through appreciating things in the microcosm rather than having to blow things up into a macrocosmic work. So this could be that moment too where we're appreciating our individuality, but also releasing that pain of comparison to another to be able to move forward with our structures and our new goals for the year. It's easy to do, friends. It's easy to do even as an astrologer, to compare your business or what you're doing with other astrologers or other people in the metaphysical community. And everyone has their own role. Everyone has their own take on things, and trying to just be the best you that you can be, even if it feels like you are working in a smaller container. You never know the impact that you're going to have on an individual. And if you're making that impact even on just one individual, it's worthwhile. So consider that, because it's so easy. There's always going to be someone who's either more successful, making more money, or has more followers or whatever. And you never know who might feel that way about you. So this is something where it's all relative. And how do we move through this at this last quarter moon? And that's also bringing us to the squaring of the nodes. So Sun squaring the nodes. So here is the December the 23rd. And this is just a pivotal moment. This is really, it's working with that moon. And the day earlier we saw the moon conjoining the south node. Very close to that bending of the nodes. And this is a turning point. Whenever we have a planet at the bending of the nodes of the moon, I think we're seeing a peak of one of the other experiences and a moving towards the opposite node. So to me, this is a peak of partnership and a beginning of a movement towards a more independent style of working. This is a potential ending of a partnership, or not just an ending. Maybe it's at its fullest potential, and now to maintain balance in your life, you're having to take on more responsibility as an individual rather than relying on a partnership. Maybe it's starting the movement towards taking yourself into account rather than always doing something for somebody else. So this is an important turning point, especially for the topic associated with the Leo topic in your life. So on this very arbitrary Cancer rising chart, the sun is in Capricorn, and it's in the 7th house. So you may have a highlight of partnerships where you're starting to move away from maybe a codependency within your family and starting to move more towards independence out in the world, in public. Maybe it's moving towards a new career. Maybe this is a turning point that's going to help you to make more money because it is the ruler of the 2nd house, but you have to be more comfortable being public and showing yourself out into the world. This is hard for Cancer rising sometimes, being public, and it leads to discomfort. And in Cancers, we don't, if anything, we prefer comfort over discomfort. And your mileage may vary with that, but I'm just speaking from my own experience. All right, so after we get through the squaring of the nodes, the next day we see Jupiter retrograde coming into its square with Saturn. So this is Saturn at 14 degrees of Pisces and Jupiter at 14 degrees of Gemini. And the feature of this that I think is most important is that Saturn is what is called in the overcoming square. And when Saturn is in the overcoming square, it is sort of dictating the terms. So let me show you how we measure this. So if you think about the center of the wheel and we look out from that center, which planet is on the right side of center? And in this case, it's Saturn. Saturn is moving in secondary motion through the zodiac. Primary motion is clockwise, secondary motion counterclockwise. The daily movement of the planets is, over the course of 24 hours, they move in primary motion. They rise to the horizon, eastern horizon, they rise to the southern in the northern hemisphere, the south at noon, and they set in the west, and they're below the surface at midnight. But over a longer period of time, those planets are moving in this opposite secondary motion through the zodiac, okay, in the counterclockwise motion. So in essence, Saturn is chasing Jupiter, or it's able to see Jupiter ahead of it. And in turn, it's going to assert more of its power over Jupiter in this particular position. Now, this is a difficult aspect for Jupiter in particular, especially because Jupiter's trying to provide resources for Saturn. So there's this kind of one-way reception between them, okay, because Jupiter is trying to provide for Saturn, but Saturn's making it difficult for Jupiter to do so. Let's see. I've got some nice comments coming in. I'll address that in a second. So we have Jupiter in Gemini 2, still retrograde. Many different pathways. We might feel that we have difficulty creating harmony between all of the different distractions that we have within our life. But Saturn again says, know your limits. This Christmas Eve day, know your limits. You know, if you can't afford to put the most expensive present under the tree or whatever it is, you have to compromise. You have to find something else. Or if you cannot visit every single family member. This is always a challenge in my youth, is I came from a divorced family, and trying to visit all of my, family on either side was always painful because someone was always disappointed. And that was a difficult thing in my adulthood too, was trying to figure out where are we going this year and who are we going to make upset. And at a certain point, I just kind of like, we're just going to stay home. Everyone's going to be upset. So how can you, and I'm not saying that that's what you should do, but I would say that that knowing your limitations around this period of time is going to be very important. There's going to be something that shows you that you just can't do everything. And I want you to be aware that Mercury is going to be moving into the T-square here. So the tension is building between these three planets. This is another one of our mutable T-square planets and situations. All right, so let's go back to our comments. What do we got here? Aaron says, I have 3 planets in detriment, so I couldn't agree more. Yeah, Aaron, and you've, like I said, you've probably been tested by life and by fate, and hopefully are a better, wiser person for it, right? Lauren says, about your music career, I love your work there. Oh, thanks, Lauren. Appreciate you. But have you ever looked at your Sabian symbols? They're all like professor energy. I think your light was just meant to shine in a different facet of life, the educator stage. I appreciate that, Lauren. Yeah, my Sabian symbols. Oh, man, my sun is in the Sabian symbol. I have to remember these. I always mix up my moon and my sun. But my sun is in one that I feel is like, it's like 14 to 15 Cancer or something like that. Or 15 and 16, I don't know, somewhere like that. And it's a professor is teaching with the aid of a mandala, with the aid of a very ancient book, which is what we're doing here today. Teaching with this circle, this mandala, the chart, and I've got ancient books all around me. So yeah, I think that's pretty cool. And then my moon is like an old man tries to interest people in ancient, but fails to interest people in ancient knowledge or something like that, which I hope I'm not boring you to death with all of this, but I just thought that was pretty funny. That's like the degree of my moon in Taurus, I think. So yeah, we all have our dharmas, and I would say that this has always been something that I've been interested in, even during my quote unquote music career. And I don't have too many regrets about it. There's sometimes that I miss some of the energy of whatever the music stuff was, but I've been given so much through the practice of astrology and the community that I've been able to connect with through this work that, yeah, there's so many different ways of living life, and we'll see what legacy we're all crafting, and what does legacy even mean? I saw this interesting interview with Mike Tyson recently. Sorry for the digression, but he was in the zeitgeist recently, and he was being interviewed by like this middle school girl, and I don't know if he just lost himself for a moment. She's like, what do you think about this fight and it's your legacy moving forward? And he's like, doesn't matter. We're all going to just turn to dust. Like, I can't do his voice. Like, doesn't matter. We're just going to return to the earth and just turn to dust. Like, I was just like, oh, there's my 12th house sun buddy with the Cancer sun and in the Leo rising 12th house. So I thought that was awesome. And so who knows where we're all going to end up, right? Yeah, Cosmic Girl says, I laughed so hard when I looked into the Sabian symbols. Yeah, Sabian symbols are really interesting. It's something I've been curious about. Although I will say I had a holy grail moment with a book that I was chasing down. Dane Rudyard has an awesome book called The Astrological Mandala, which talks about Sabian symbols, and it was a super, super hard book to find. And I actually found a copy used at the Great Lakes Astrology Conference at their used book table one year for like $5, and it's like a $300 book online. I think they've most recently reissued it, but before it was really hard to find. And I've had some moments with my chart with it, but yeah, there's a lot of great work that you can do. There's a lot of different ways that methods to have the oracle speak through you. Okay, so that's our Jupiter retrograde square with Saturn. Okay, Saturn in the overcoming square. Be aware of your limitations. Try not to force things. We're getting closer and closer to the Mars-Pluto opposition too, so there's going to be tension building with that. And then we're going to be moving into this period where we are seeing Mercury coming into opposition with Jupiter. So again, the tension builds over the Christmas holiday. And here we have Jupiter and Mercury squaring off, opposing one another. And each of them squaring Saturn. So again, this to me is a point in time where, sorry, I'm just drawing on my screen here, where those mutable areas of our life are pulling us in a lot of different directions. Okay? Like we are wanting to communicate our passion, what we believe in. We are feeling like we are being split into a lot of different directions with distractions, multiple options and pathways. We've got a lot of uncertainty in the air. Like that I think is important too, especially with the transition to new government in America. There's a lot of uncertainty between now and mid-January and probably forward. And we're kind of trying to understand what's going to be required of us moving forward. But I do think that Saturn is important here, and Saturn is very powerful. I think that Mercury is going to be in the overcoming square to Saturn. So be very careful at this point that you're not moving too quickly and moving towards expressing a belief without gathering the right information. It's easy to overshoot the mark, but I think that Mercury-Jupiter oppositions often can be communications that are kind of haughty, or there's an arrogance to it. And I think Saturn just trying to mediate between those two says, just slow down. You don't have to pretend like you know everything, right? Like this could be the talk at the dinner table where everyone has to have a solution for something, but it's okay to just say, you know what? This part of this sucks and we don't know how to fix it yet, but we'll have to live into the answers. I think that's important. Like, or that this is great or something is great. It doesn't have to be the same thing. And, you might still need some more information to be able to find the way forward. Lauren says, I think you could definitely merge music and astrology, talk about some impactful lyrics. Forget what the Beatles had to say. I bet you'd be able to voice a higher wisdom. Now, having gone through this middle pathway, and you could bridge the two ladders of your life into that musically expressive area. Yeah, I don't think music is done for me. I just think that you're right. Like taking some time to live some different experiences. When I stopped writing songs in like, I don't think I've written a song since 2018. There was something like, I think I was super tired from the previous years of the administration that we're coming into. And I had just been writing so many sad songs, and it was getting harder and harder to write. And I think being able to see life from different perspectives, I think there's different ways I can contextualize those feelings and hopefully provide some wisdom. My songs were there was always some kind of teaching element within it, without trying to be didactic. That's always a fine line with music, especially if you're trying to make it meaningful. How do you show something versus telling? And that was my way to show things. And I've gotten more into the ability to communicate directly with some of those themes, but there's something special about music and poetry that can help connect in ways that disarm people's boundaries and barriers and resistance to those ideas. And I don't know. If you all are interested and you wanted to hear some of the songs that I wrote during the first go around with what we are about to experience, you could check out my SoundCloud. I have a song on there called Burn Your Empire Down that was in direct response to one of our first immigration crises, as far as like a lot of the deportation of Arab immigrants, or the attempt to do that. And it was sort of a protest song against that. And it includes a poem that's written on the Statue of Liberty. And it's just a powerful, I think it was a powerful moment for me creatively, if you want to check that out. But there's also other cool stuff on there. I wrote a song about Detroit and its history, and I have a really cool song about Vivian Meyer, who was a photographer who went and took these pictures while she was babysitting these kids in the big city in the turn of the century, and just showing things through her eyes. And I thought that was kind of a neat moment. But yeah, let me know what you think. And maybe there will be new songs and new things to... I think we need art. We need to make art, especially when times feel dark. But I appreciate that, Lauren. I appreciate the encouragement. Don't keep holding my feet to the fire with that, because it's easy to just get into our old habits and get into just grinding out astrological transits and stuff like that. And I think I need that encouragement. I just recently celebrated Jeff Buckley's birthday, and he was a huge influence on me musically. And I remember doing a lot of tribute shows for him, and I really enjoyed those experiences. Okay, so we've talked about Mercury opposite Jupiter on the 26th of December, so we'll move forward here. Again, the tension between trying to unify body and spirit to move towards a goal versus these feelings of ambiguity and multiple pathways and irreconcilable differences. That's the tension that we have there. And then Saturn squaring it in from a place of learning to understand our limitations and the dangers of overestimating our ability. And then you can see here, Mercury squares Saturn the next day. Okay, so again, running into the square is allowing us to, and I believe, where did this Mercury in malefic enclosure end? So that ended on the 13th, so that was a while ago. I'm just making sure I didn't forget that. But this is, another opportunity for us to understand through the cosmic no what actually is possible. I think getting a no to something can be actually very instructive. So try not to bemoan the no's and the brick walls that come up in your life. Just an example, just piggybacking off what Lauren was saying. My ambition as a young musician may have taken me in directions that ultimately wouldn't have been satisfying for my constitution. I had a big cosmic Saturn moment having a child when I was 23 years old, right in the very beginning of my desires to establish myself as a musician. And it's severely curtailed by my own choice. Okay, let me make that clear. My movement ability in like traveling for music, because it was important to me to be there for my kid physically. And for the most part, I think I achieved that. But I had to give up certain opportunities. And I did that willingly, and I don't regret that. And looking back on it, seeing some of my friends that were able to pursue those opportunities that I bemoaned not being able to, I don't know if they're any happier. Some of their lives are somewhat empty because they did some of that at the expense of their relationships. And now they're coming to the other side of that It's a lonely place on the when you have to come down off the mountaintop by yourself. And I've always believed in being able to go as far as you can with the people that you care about. And this cosmic no that we might get with Mercury squaring Saturn, it may be for our highest good, right? And it helped understand what is possible. Painted Turtle says, All Flowers in Time. That's my song request. I went and listened to that the other day, Lauren. That is a song that Jeff Buckley performed with the lead singer of the Cocteau Twins, Elizabeth Fraser. A beautiful tune. And I mean, yeah, maybe I'll learn it. I'll learn it for you. If you want to book a session and you just want me to play Jeff Buckley songs for you, we'll see. You have to give me some time for that, but maybe I'll just have a concert at some point online so that we can participate in the joy of song. We'll see. Okay, so let's keep going. We're at the home stretch here. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. So on the 28th, we have Venus making a square to Uranus. So this is one of the last aspects before the new moon in Capricorn. Okay, and here we have let's see here. We have Venus at 24 degrees of Aquarius, 24, 23, squaring Uranus at 23 degrees of Taurus. Now, it's already passed a little bit in this chart, but you get the idea. The December the 28th, Saturday, we're going to see this perfecting. So Venus moving through Aquarius 3 probably makes leaving the past behind attractive. Okay, that decan is all about like which hill do you no longer want to die on or continue to defend, and how do you break free from the past often through frustration, saying I just can't take this anymore. I'm so frustrated, I just can't continue this fight. So there may be something where it could be through relationships, it could be through a desire that you have where you're like, I just don't want to keep fighting this anymore. Like I realizing that your actions previously, Uranus and Taurus 3, may not have yielded the results that you wanted, can help you break free from a desire that isn't serving you anymore. So I think that's the real theme with this, is breaking free from a desire that didn't really pan out the way that you wanted it to, and moving out into the unknown and taking with you the wisdom of the experiences, as we were just reflecting on with music. Lauren says that transition was also what you shared last time with Pluto striking the Cancer Sun. That opposition likewise changed my role into parenthood. Don't tease. I'm going to start saving money for that performance. I appreciate that, friend. Thank you for the flattery today. If you guys aren't familiar with how to get to a Leo rising's heart, flattery does definitely work. So appreciate that, friend, and thank you for the encouragement. Okay, so we've talked about the Venus-Uranus square. And let's end our session through the transits of December and talk a little bit about the second new moon of the month on December the 30th at 9 degrees of Capricorn. So here is the new moon at 9 degrees of Capricorn, and it is going to be hosted by Saturn in Pisces 2, so a harmonious sextile from its ruler. We have a real pressure cooker starting to come together with Mars opposite Pluto, Mars retrograde opposite Pluto, that is applying during this new moon. Okay, that aspect perfects on January the 3rd. We are also having the separation of Mercury and Jupiter's opposition, and the square between Mercury and Saturn, and the separation between Venus and Uranus. So if you look at everything that's building up to this new moon, you're probably feeling a lot of tension, pulled in a lot of different directions, Maybe we overestimated our energy, our abilities, etc. We finally get so fed up and frustrated with trying to defend that belief system that we're liberated from it with the Venus and Uranus square. And we're having this building tension between our own personal desires and our own competition, that like the own, or maybe even if it's competing with ourselves and others, and the need to leave some of that behind to be able to unify with others with the Pluto and Aquarius. Or there could be rising tension between technology and your self-expression. I know we've seen the rise of artificial intelligence, and what does that mean for artists and the ability for pretty much anybody to type a few sentences into a computer program and fart out some art? Like, what does that mean for us as artists moving forward? I mean, we don't have to debate all that today, but those are questions that you might be facing moving forward as we start to reconcile what this technology means. Pluto is going to bring up the dark side of a lot of these things, the dark side of subscribing to an ideological fixed ideal or group that holds that ideal, the dangers of technological advances that we haven't quite considered the ramifications of, especially artificial intelligence. I think we've seen the technology explode without really enough people asking the questions of, well, just because we can, does that mean that we should? I'm always a firm believer in asking those ethical questions before we unleash the new invention, technology, whatever it is, onto the world. But that's not always how it works. It's oftentimes it doesn't work that way because people are in a race to profit from those new inventions, etc. And they don't care what the ethics are behind it because their ethic is, how can I make the most money for me? And I don't give a shit if this actually hurts people. And that's frustrating. And I wish we could get past that. But this new moon, I think, is a one where we are going to be planting new seeds, right? We think about all the themes we talked about with Capricorn 1 and finding our new place. This is a powerful moment for finding our new place and our new ability to be an individual within a very changing society. What is our new role, our new individual role going to be within the collective need? We're all going to have to play a different role as we move forward. No matter, and this is detached completely from just, well, not completely, but it can be detached from just the new political landscape in America. I mean, think about the new role that you might have to play in response to a changing climate. Think of the role that you might have to play in response to a changing technological landscape. These are big changes that we all are experiencing where we're going to have to figure out how to live differently. And that can throw us into a confusion as to who and what we want to be within that new reality. So those are some of the questions that I think would be important to ask ourselves at this new moon in Capricorn. Is who do we want to be within a very necessary need to understand the changes that are happening around us collectively? And then what is possible and what isn't? With Saturn hosting this, you're going to have to be really realistic about whether you have the skills to carry out what is inspiring you or whether you need to hold back and learn some more information. I'm always a fan of taking things slow. Now, that doesn't mean that there isn't times where we need to snap into action, but oftentimes we try to force things when we should really be kind of letting the process play out. So that's what I've got for you. We'll talk about this moving forward too. We'll talk about all the new moons and full moons, and we'll do some more Q&As and all those things, and I'll try to contextualize it as we move into these changes as well. Okay. So I do have an I-Ching and an animal for you today. So let's bring this back up here. And I've got a couple comments coming in here. Rachel says, I love the Cocteau Twins. Yeah, great band. Great band. Elizabeth Fraser, beautiful voice. Says this is such beautiful wisdom for Spencer. Yes, Lauren is keeping me honest here and helping with her observations. So thank you, Lauren. Again, it's a communal effort, and I like getting that feedback. I like being able to receive information, advice, encouragement. Just as much as I like to give it. So I think that it's nice what we're creating here, and I appreciate all of you friends. So let's take a look at this here. Ooh, Miranda's here. What's up, Miranda? Says, I love your talk today. Thanks for all the great insights. Really appreciate all you do. Thank you, Miranda. I appreciate you being here, friend. And I appreciate you. And I appreciate your enthusiasm. Miranda asks a lot of great questions in our groups and has been bringing up some really important topics to pursue with our astrology. So appreciate you, friend. Okay, so let's take a look at our I-Ching. So here is our question. What is our essence of the astrology of December 2024? So here we have the hexagram number 3, which translates to growing pains, okay? Birth pangs. This is our difficulty in the beginning. And it's changing to hexagram number 61, which translates to inner truth, sincerity, conformity, which that which is inside, and that which is expressed externally. So this is a period of time. The I-Ching says you're facing a situation akin to growing pains. A new era is beginning. Sound familiar? We're stepping into a new era for sure. Things are struggling to take form. Chaos is slowly and painfully being converted into the first semblance of a new order. This confusion may reside in your projects and undertakings and in your own thoughts and desires and even in your relationships with others. You may find that what you once thought was settled and clear is now becoming unsettled and uncertain. You may be questioning old assumptions and beliefs, although you are not yet quite sure what will replace them. We are leaving the confinements of what is safe and familiar and moving to a new frontier of indeterminate scope and abundant possibilities. Indeed, there are so many possibilities that you may now find yourself adrift and confused. That sounds a lot like Jupiter and Gemini, doesn't it? And, we're being asked to do new things with Pluto moving into Aquarius. So with all that mutable T-square, things haven't taken shape yet. And we may be struggling to figure out what is required of us moving forward. So the changing lines, we have two. We have one in the second place. It says, difficulty creates an impasse, like a team of yoked horses pulling against each other. He does not seek to plunder. He seeks to marry. The maiden practices constancy. She does not pledge herself, and after 10 years, then she pledges herself. So Jack Balkin goes on to say, this story of a betrothed woman is a metaphor for dealing with difficulties. Sometimes nothing seems to be going right in our efforts to advance. Things seem to be at cross purposes, or at T-squared purposes. Hence, the text tells us it is as if horses of our carriage were pulling in opposite directions. Suddenly, someone offers an unexpected solution, a quick and easy escape, or a clever end run around the situation. The situation may be offered with the best of motives. Nevertheless, we must not be tempted to take the easy way out. This situation or this solution might not be right for us. Like an offer of marriage, it has serious consequences and imposes new and undesirable obligations and responsibilities. It will keep us from making the right choices later on. Instead, we should bide our time until things become clearer. Hence, the text says to wait 10 years, the length of a fulfilled cycle of time. If we are patient and have faith, we will get the help we need from the right people at the right time. Okay, Saturn in that overcoming position, patience. The changing line at the top says, like a team of yoked horses pulling against each other, one weeps tears of blood. So a similar continuation of that theme. So faced with difficulty, some people despair and become trapped in cycles of failure and recrimination. They convince themselves that the struggle is too great and it becomes too great. They tell themselves that it is all too much for them, and so it becomes too much. They see themselves as failures, and so inevitably they fail. You are in danger of falling into such a cycle of resignation and remorse. You have lost your perspective and hence lost your way in the situation. You cannot see the difficulties you face for what they are. They are real, but not limitless, and hence you cannot find your way past them. If you do not take a more realistic attitude, hello, Saturn and Pisces, things will never improve. The obstacles to your success are now located not in the outside world, but within yourself. Take a fresh look at the situation. Recognize that you do have the ability to succeed, and that the problems you face are not insurmountable ones. Have faith that you can overcome your current frustrations. Leave the past behind and learn to move on to better things before it's too late. I think that's great advice. I would say that there is necessary mourning for many people after the results of the United States election. There are real consequences for people that are going to lose rights and are going to have to overcome greater challenges than they would have had the other situation manifested. And I think it's easy to fall into the trap of hopelessness and despair. And I honestly, it's been a real struggle, honestly, for some of us in my own community. Just thinking about how this is going to affect people that I care and people that I love and that are in my communities. And I think that the I-Ching is telling us that it's a reflection, I think, of the Pluto in Aquarius glass ceiling type of experience. I talked about this in the Pluto and Aquarius thing, especially regarding Aquarius and Joy Usher's work. Joy Usher is an excellent astrologer from Australia, and she talks about Saturn's control of the narrative leads us and is designed for us to feel despair, because it tries to tell us through the control of information that this particular thing isn't possible. If you tell, like, for example, wanting to roll back things like women's rights, like if you keep telling women that they can't do something, you're wearing them down. But if you stay hopeful and you stay, engaged with the ability to break through those glass ceilings, etc., through opening ourselves to the information that yes, these things are possible. I think that's important. That maintaining that hope, especially when things get difficult, and not necessarily feeling like you have to do something right away. That's to me what the combination of these two lines are telling us. It says that your mission, whatever it is in the new reality that we are all facing right now, and again, it doesn't have to just be in relationship to the political party changing. It could be in regards to the very real changes that we have around our climate, our economic situation, etc. The new pieces on the chessboard are being rearranged, and you have to let these pieces be arranged on some level to understand what our role is going to be moving next. Now, that doesn't mean we allow the most negative manifestations to happen. I think it's important if you see that you need to take action, you need to take action immediately. But I do think that this is a longer term transit where being able to have some objectivity with that is going to be helpful moving forward. And that's leading to the hexagram 61, inner sincerity, inner truth, confidence, trustworthiness, conformity between what is outside and what is inside. We've been talking a lot today about different phases of our life, and I would say that throughout my creative career, I was always trying to do this work through teaching at songwriting. I was always talking about life and symbols and metaphorical language, figurative language, and now there's less of a barrier between who I want to be internally and what I'm experiencing externally. And that's really the key for authenticity. And I think that that's part of the Mars and Leo retrograde, is how do we become our authentic selves, especially when maybe it's difficult, becomes more difficult to do so. One thing that people aren't completely understanding with all of this is that, well, I think that they are, and some people choose to remain blissfully ignorant, is that it is going to become more difficult for many people to be themselves because of the very severe ideological limitations that people want to place upon other people. And that's going to be where how do we maintain our authenticity, especially when we're coming up against the very dark challenges of people not allowing people to be themselves, whether it affects them or not, you know? So it's really important work that we're going to be doing moving forward here. Okay, let's see. And we have one more. We have an animal here today too. Kai says, thank you, wonderful talk today. Thank you, Kai, appreciate you. Kai says, I did find one Venus-Pluto thing from February 20th. Astronomers identify the most luminous object ever observed, KSO J05294351, a quasar that accretes around 1 solar mass per day. My goodness. So new foreign objects coming to our awareness with the Venus-Pluto. Good, I like that. And there's been a lot of people that have been talking about the discovery of new life that might humble us in thinking of our central place in the universe as the only, the only sentient life in the galaxy, universe, in space, etc. So maybe there is more things around that. There's been some talk about potentially life emerging from the oceans that we didn't understand was as advanced or potentially not from this planet. So you take one look at an octopus and some of the things you see in the deep sea and you're like, yeah, I could see that. That makes sense. So thank you for that, Kai. Painted Turtle, Lauren says, Out of Bounds Venus is the lasso today that is bringing Spencer closer to my goal to hear Spencer live, which is apparently a reading with time to prepare music. My Venus in Taurus in the 11th is very satisfied, but I would be happier if you were on the stage for everyone. I'll keep working her. Oh, I appreciate that, friend. Yeah, just keep it with it. One thing I'll have to do is I'll have to carve out time to re-engage with some of those things. The guitar's been sitting sort of rusting for a little while, and my own particular inner critic and standard will need to re-engage with that a little bit before showing it back to the world. So, but thank you for the encouragement. I appreciate you, friend, and we'll make it happen. In the meantime, there's many performances on online and etc. And if you really want a copy of my EP, Tightrope Walker, you can find that online, or I'll just send you a copy. I've got a whole closet full of them. All right, friends. So we have an interesting animal, and that is the scorpion for December. I say it's interesting because we start the month with a new moon, on the fixed star Antares, which is the heart of the scorpion. So we start the month with an intensity, with a drive to achieve a goal, but maybe even a drive that is rooted in fear, and a drive that is defending what we might consider a dying life force or a threat to our safety and our security. And sometimes when we take these actions in defense through seeing things as threats, we can harm ourselves. Like a scorpion that is cornered in like a situation with a fire or something have often been known to sting themselves to death, and that can be real challenging. So how do we move forward and meet the challenges that we have, whatever they may mean to you and your individual situation, without stinging ourselves to death, right? So this does represent control over our emotions. Like if we think about it in relationship to Scorpio, being able to be very efficient with our defenses, okay? Inner strength, good defenses, being able to understand when we're becoming too obsessed with an idea, too paranoid about things that haven't yet happened. This is one thing I'm trying to stay present with as I move forward. We're being bombarded with information and changes that are happening. And it's very easy to take each action to its very extreme. And it's important to understand where things could go to maintain our safety. But it's also important to be able to stay present and meet each challenge as it comes. I think that we can work with foresight, but we have to chop wood and carry water. We have to take care of our daily self-care habits, routines. We have to do the dishes. We have to do our laundry. We have to make sure we get enough to eat and enough sleep, and maintain our mental health and sanity. Sometimes it'll necessitate us taking a break from taking in information. Sometimes it will necessitate us engaging with information. I would encourage you to try to find balance and to find the middle way. I had a comment that I pushed back on a little bit with the Pluto and Aquarius last thing, where the person was encouraging me to shut off the news and to just go meditate and find your spiritual center, which I agree with to a point. I think it is important to be centered, and I think it is important to take breaks, but I also feel like it's important to stay present and engaged with our reality without just sticking our head in the sand. That can lead to the echo chambers that are very destructive. I received a test of that advice this past week about falling into our echo chambers and coming up against a situation where there was some differing of worldviews and opinions. And how did we maintain our humanity in that situation? And I was kind of chuckling to myself, like, yes, this is a beautiful test. I appreciate this test, universe. How do we still maintain our harmony, even if we agree to disagree on certain things? And how do we find the bridge and the connections between one another and continue to just respect each other's humanity within that? And it's such an amazing opportunity. It's such an amazing opportunity to actually learn about, quote unquote, the other side, which is really just an illusion. So that's what I've got for you today. Just maintain your hope. Try to find your balance. Try to turn down the intensity if you can, while not checking out completely. Okay? It's going to be super important moving forward. So, friends, thank you so much. And Painted Tarot is going to Spotify, SoundCloud. Yeah, you can find Spencer Show music, SoundCloud. There's some unreleased materials on there if you want to find that as well. So thank you, Lauren. And thank you, all of you, for being here today. Again, do me a huge favor. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you aren't, subscribe to the newsletter. Go find me at spencermichaud.com if you need help with signing up for a reading. Go check on the Book Now button. For those of you who have reached out about booking a reading, I hope to be able to respond to those emails now that we've gotten past this particular live stream. And go follow me over at Spencer Michaud on Instagram, Threads, Twitter, but also at spencermichaud.bluesky.something on Blue Sky. That's the new place where people who are getting a little frustrated with the Twitter experience are starting to migrate to. And I have a handle on there as well. Just to search for Spencer Michaud and you should find me. All right, friends, that's what I've got for you today. I hope that you have a great December and that you're able to find balance and peace within these changes. Sometimes we can say, sometimes it's this too shall pass. We'll get through this. We'll get through it by continuing to support one another and to listen to one another rather than becoming isolated from one another and trying to find the things that unite us to be able to overcome all of the challenges that we have in life, not just individual things that are that the powers that be are using to split us up into factions. Okay? All right, friends. It's always worthwhile to sit down and have this time with you, and it's always a good experience to see your kindness and to try to bring that out into the world. And thank you, Lauren, for being here today. Lots to write down for December. Remember to be kind to one another. Even if you don't connect on every single thing, there's something that you can connect on, and things work better if we default towards kindness and reciprocity. So that's what I've got for you today. Take care, friends, and we'll see you the next time. Peace.